I'm Jack,
And I'm Brenden,
and we're coming to you from beyond the terrarium.
where DIY meets naturalistic reptile keeping.
Enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode 14, I think, of Beyond the Terrarium. We're super stoked to be back tonight. We recorded a live episode on Friday, so hopefully you guys tuned into that and were able to check it out. But we're excited to be back. Usual schedule. Brendan and I should be slowing down on everything else, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks. So we should be back to normal. We will see.
Something always seems to pop up when you're
always
thinking you're done. That's always something else.
Yep. There's always something. So, but we're super stoked tonight. We got an awesome guest. We got our friend Daniel from Thorzan, is how you would say it on Instagram, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's my Instagram tag name given to me.
I love it, dude. And also from the Sonoma Sloth House as well. So awesome. Yeah, we're super stoked for this episode, and we're going to talk a lot of the cool stuff that Daniel's got going on, and all the builds and the DIY stuff that he's doing over there, because it's very impressive. So before we get into that, because we're getting into go time here, Brendan, any update on the cat gecko eggs?
Nope.
No, same as
They're
last
still
week.
chilling. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave that because the next episode will give like a full update on them, and it probably hasn't changed much since then. So
no, they look the exact same as they did 6 months ago.
Awesome. Well, hopefully they'll be hatching soon. So, but all right. So Daniel, wanted to get into it and just talk to you about like how you got started, how you got to where you're at right now, because it's not necessarily like a everyday person, like what you got going on over there. So if you just want to talk us through that.
Yeah. So it's definitely not just straight from point A to point B, and now I'm here. There was like many of us that do anything with any kind of herbs, reptiles, a lot of us were all influenced by Steve Irwin when we were kids. And, for him, for me as a kid, that was like the coolest thing ever to see. So I always knew I wanted to work with crocodilians. But I also have a big passion for fish keeping. When I was a kid, I wanted to be that guy that was on Shark Week when the great whites would smack the seal decoy. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to be out on the water. I wanted to be not sitting behind a desk. So I didn't do too hot in high school. And, like most of us, college was something that was pushed so heavily, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't go to college. So I went into the military for 6 years, and that's how I paid for my schooling. And as I started going to college in Alaska for marine biology, one of my grad professors, he's like, realistically, you're just going to be sitting behind a desk begging for funding, because we were out on a boat studying salmon shark, and he's like, it took me 5 years just to get this weekend.
Oh, man.
Wow.
And, to me, I was just like, that's ridiculous. No wonder it's get research. It's hard to get funding. But, again, I didn't want to sit there and crunch numbers. I wanted to be active. So once I was kind of done with there, I went to a university in Kansas called Friends University and got my degree in zoo science, which was great because my entire bachelor's degree was spent in a zoo being hands-on, and not only just reptiles, but, birds, primates, big cats, elephants, rhino, like you name it. You were learning how to essentially work and operate and run within a zoo. And from there, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dubia.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I actually managed their pet store.
No way.
Oh, wow.
So they're reptarian. They have actually me and one of the owners. We are actually the ones that started building that.
Wow.
But during, I did decide to leave. I wanted to do more with my life than that. And that's actually where I met my wife at the Denver Reptile Expo, who's now my wife, I should say, Denver Reptile Expo. And she convinced me to move out to California and help her educational outreach program.
Wow. Okay.
Super cool.
Here we are.
Yeah, a lot of places, right time, kind of seems like.
Yeah, it makes you feel like it was like meant to be, just because you had to be in the right place at the right time for that to happen.
Yeah. We should mention this. We got to talk about what's behind you and everything that you got going on there.
I tend to move when I talk. So you actually are seeing the Sloth House.
Wow.
Dude,
okay.
So cool.
This is an area that able to rotate my camera. I don't know. You can see.
There's a sloth right there.
Sloths. Here's another one.
Wow.
And where are you at, Mala? I don't know. They tend to sleep and power nap throughout the day, so they're way more active at nighttime. So yeah, what you guys are seeing is a this was our response to the pandemic, because we couldn't do programs or travel and do anything, so we had to find a way to get support. At the time, about 150 animals. Now it's over 200 animals every single day. So we kind of made this whole area that you can kind of see to allow people to come and do interactive tours. Now this is just the inside area where we keep our sloths, but it's all South American based. Almost everything in here is free roaming, with the exception of the piranhas and the mata mata turtle.
Nice.
We have our sloths in here, three-banded armadillo, caiman lizard, the mata mata, piranhas, and then we go outside. That's when you see our morlets, crocodile, capybaras, etc. All that fun stuff.
That's awesome, man. That is so cool.
It was an interesting project, I'll say that.
Yeah. So is this is the facility that when you met your wife, you guys came out to build? This, or did it change?
So originally this was just, hey, we're going to stay here. We're going to save up money so that we can open a much larger place to the public. But we can't work for 8 or 9 months, because California took the pandemic way more serious than like the rest. Yeah. It was when everyone else was fine and free. We're still standing in lines and masks waiting to go into Walmart and fighting over rice. So, and the Department of Wildlife was still bringing animals. I mean, 2020, we took in over 300 reptiles.
Wow.
And the guys all came from big zoos across the country. So we had to find a way to, so we essentially spent the rest of our savings on this, because we had to find a way to generate income. Because going out of business isn't really an option, because if every zoo's trying to get rid of their animals, it's not like we'd be able to be like, okay, who wants 10 alligators? Who knows who wants that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure.
This was just a very quick response to, we need to get something to make money, and it'll be our 4th year being open.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. Are you looking back on it, are you happy you guys did it?
Yes and no.
Okay.
As it's expensive to be in California for sure. I mean, the building materials out here it's way more expensive than almost anywhere else in the country. Like, I see people build their outdoor enclosures and they have like this severe weather treated wood. You can't buy that here. It's not legal to sell.
Really?
So yeah, you can't buy that.
Wow.
You can buy that red deep pressure treated wood that's super toxic, but for whatever reason. Yeah, so we have to get really creative with how we contain animals in a way that's safe for them, or we have to drive out of state and bring materials back into the state.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
That's insane.
Like, should just, when we had all the animals we had, just cut our losses and move to another state. But then at the same time, I am happy we stayed, because we work a lot with schools here, children's hospitals here. We have a great working relationship where we're at in our county. And also, if we left, there's nobody else in California in our area that really takes in alligators, common snapping turtles, and those animals all euthanized if they're not taken in. So if we leave, then those guys have nowhere to go.
Yeah. Well, at least there's like you can feel the impact of your facility, and like all the good that you guys are doing there, for sure.
Now, we try.
Yeah.
But we definitely try.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we had a guy, Nick Brewster, on a couple weeks ago, and he works at a wildlife rehabilitation facility as well. And, just hearing from both of you guys kind of what you're doing out there, the rest of us who are just hobbyists, like, cannot be more thankful, because without you guys, I don't know that we would still be in business over here.
Yeah.
Somebody might say there's too many alligators out there.
So we guest speak on reptile shows, and I probably get more hate from reptile keepers than appreciation.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, I'm out there. We took in 57 alligators last year.
Yeah.
As much as I love crocodilians, I'd never recommend them as a pet. And
yeah,
on stage, just telling people please stop getting these things. And
yeah,
people, no, you can't tell me what to do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Most of our alligators don't come in healthy. So I mean
Yeah.
that's a topic, but get the support and all that kind of stuff. From people such as yourselves that are also doing awesome work.
Yeah. No, when we talk about Kevin, my Cayman at all, I'm always like, this is not like something that people should be doing. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because obviously I'm doing it, so it's hard for me to stay there and say, you probably shouldn't own a Cayman, but
yeah,
at the same time, it's like I am dedicating so many resources, and my whole life plan is based around that. And if you're not going to do that, like, you probably shouldn't,
exactly.
purchase something like that. And just anyone shouldn't probably purchase a Nile crocodile like they can in Pennsylvania, because that's absurd.
No. Yeah, it's insane.
Those guys have skyrocketed recently, and unfortunately, it's being taken so lightly on the internet. It's being treated like a joke. Hey, we're gonna go out. Like, you're the crocodilian that's responsible for the most humans being taken out. It's a monstrous animal.
Yeah.
I have two, and my guy's only 2 years old, and he's only almost 3 feet long.
Wow.
And he only eats once a week. He's
just growing machine. Yeah.
Monster.
Yeah.
He's great. He's amazing, but he's a beast.
Yeah. Whenever I see that on like Instagram or whatever, somebody getting a Nile crocodile, I'm just like, what are you going to do with it in 3 years? Like, I have no idea, and like, even for a facility like yourself, I'm sure it's probably difficult to figure out, how you're going to house crocodilians as they grow in size.
We've talked a little bit about like greenhouse ideas and stuff. I mean, I have a couple different ideas in the works. So granted, right now they're very manageable given their size, but I am. My wife and I are constantly talking about. I can't say how many times I'm sitting there on graph paper, redrawing what I want to do with all these different crocodilian enclosures and how I want them set up, the filtration, and all these different things. And for me, it's always changing, because I'll look at a zoo and be like, "That's a great idea," and it's like I'm back to the drawing board with what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, we have quite a variety of crocodilians here.
Yeah. So can you walk us through some of those? I guess I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So I mean, and this is to the best of my knowledge, but over the course of the past 4 years, we've become California's largest crocodilian rescue.
Wow.
Now, granted, a lot of our crocodilians are still ranging from that 1 foot to like 3 foot range. So again, very manageable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have Nile crocodiles. I have 2 saltwater crocodiles. My critically endangered West African thunder snout, she's actually on breeding loan at the Phoenix Herpetological Sanctuary.
Nice. Okay.
Our female Philippine crocodile, I don't know if you know who Justin Brown is.
Yeah.
Our female Philippine crocodile to be paired with his male over in Florida. So we're stoked for that species. We housed an Orinoco crocodile for Dallas World Aquarium for a bit, but I have smooth front caimans, dwarf caimans. I have a Yakari caiman. I have spectacled caimans, Morlet's crocodiles, freshwater crocodile.
That's awesome.
So crazy, man.
Alligators, with my biggest guy is about 11 feet long, over 4 inches, and he's only 16 years old.
Wow. Yeah, I saw the video you feeding him goats the other day, I think, right?
Yes, he's goat kids.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Put them thawed. They're donated to us because they're stillborns from a farm down the road. I should say that.
Yeah.
Not feeding.
Yeah, not buying goats from the local farmer just off Craigslist and Jurassic Park style.
No. Expensive.
Yeah.
And quite a variety of crocodilians here.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you guys have always been like, whenever I have a croc question, I feel like you're my first go-to if I've got it. Just because I feel like you guys have had like just so many crocodilians and stuff. And when I was building Kevin's enclosure, I hit you up with a ton of questions on that.
I remember.
Yeah. So you're always my first resource. So, but what do you, what's like your, like how did you get into crocodiles? Like what is it about crocodiles that do it for you? And why'd you go down the road of getting a bunch of them?
It's again, the whole Steve Irwin thing, and also being a kid, like I was fascinated with dinosaurs. Even my favorite fish, historic ones and stuff. But I've always liked dinosaurs. They're always really cool. You see them and just when I was a kid, I was like, oh, that's a living dinosaur. Like that's just raw power. It's unchanged. It's like evolution's perfection is what I kind of consider, because they are so unchanged for millions of years. And I never thought I would get to work with them at the capacity I get to, just because a lot of these species you'll only find at big AZA zoos. But I did a lot of volunteering, a lot of internships, a lot of work, and volunteering my own time, not getting paid at zoos all across the country, just because I wanted to learn how to work with these animals. And that fire really got lit as social media kind of really took off, and you would just see the way people were treating these animals. Gosh, what was it? I can't remember. It's like, was it swamp people or whatever? It was like on whatever
where they killed the alligators.
Yeah, it's like I was sitting there thinking like I couldn't even imagine if they showed any mammal being shot in the head with a shotgun, put through them and being hauled out, like hooping and hollering. I was like, that's, I get people not being afraid of them. They're dangerous animals, but it's like, they're still animals. And with them, I started realizing how intelligent they are, how they recognize things. And so there's personalities to them. So I really wanted to really work on changing people's perspectives and perceptions of these animals, not to go out and love them and get them as pets, but to learn to live with them, not against them. I always tell thing as alligator infested waters. It's here a long time before. And so once I started working with alligators, naturally I kind of moved into caiman, since in the alligator family, and then I moved into crocodiles from there. But then, once you start working with one zoo, and all of a sudden word kind of goes around. I mean, so it's at the point where I've been to multiple fish and wildlife in multiple states, and I've taught their wardens how to safely catch up alligator, crocodiles, and stuff like that. Wow. To identify them, how to work with them in a way that's going to be safe for not only the warden, but for the animal as well. I have the privilege of guest teaching at a couple of our local junior colleges, and I hold wet labs for future veterinarians at UC Davis. Because, obviously this is information that there's not a lot of it out there. So along with our primary veterinarian, we teach them how to do blood draws, how to microchip, how to read and measure behavior, stress, all these kind of things. So, the past few years, it's really just kind of picked up. Never in my life did I ever think I'd be privileged enough to own 2 saltwater crocodiles. But we found during the kind of the pandemic, it's no brainer that reptiles don't bring in money to zoos. And zoos that were breeding all these reptiles, and with the great idea of conservation, they're realizing, what do we do with all these babies? These zoos still have their alligators from 40, 50, 60 years ago. And to the general public, you have one big crocodilian, you fill the niche. You don't need it. And so, and unfortunately, now zoos were starting to just be like, hey, we heard you worked with this zoo. Any chance you'd be interested in these? And we're like, okay, well. And we have said no before. We do know our limits. We've been offered some monstrous plans. I'm like, I'm not set right now. I would love to, but I can't right now. So it's kind of how it's gotten from this to that.
That's so funny. Back when I was still in college, I think at the time, and I had these dreams of owning all kinds of crocodilians and stuff like that. And I barely had a caiman. I had a caiman for a year at this point. So I didn't, fully understand what I was up against if I wanted to do something like that. And I just remember just hitting this wall of I don't even know how people are getting these. 'Cause it's, they're all, you can't sell them between state lines and stuff for the most part. And, I was coming at it from an entirely how do you buy ball pythons in the internet mindset? It wasn't, it wasn't an informed mindset. But I've realized over the years that like you said, zoos aren't necessarily always equipped to handle all these large crocodilians, especially, they breed them one time and they could have 50 babies, more than that. So, and it's not, as long as you're set up right, it's not that hard to get in there and be able to, be a place. Justin's a good example. He's got a ton because he does it right, and you got to do it right for zoos to recognize. But yeah, what you're doing is a dream of mine for sure, but it probably will never happen. So I'm gonna stick with my one Cayman and not go too far after that.
No, there's still got a lot of time left. Who knows? Things could change.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In my retirement, but I'll be too old to be jumping on a saltwater crocodile by then. So
You're never
that's
too
awesome,
old, Jack. Never too old.
How do you how are your crocodilians set up? Like if you were designing a crocodilian enclosure for your current setup, like how would you think about it and
so
from a DIY perspective? Sorry.
For us, all crocodilians are restricted as pets in the state of California. We have a species permit, which means for every species of crocodilian I have, we have 2,400 hours of documented experience working with that species. But also, California's Fish and Wildlife places restrictions, or not really restrictions, but requirements for how an enclosure is made. Like, for instance, if you have an alligator or anything that's over 6 foot, you can't have just a chain link fence because they'll just climb right up and out of it. You have to have like the angled in post that keep it inwards or a fully covered roof. For the longest time, they would not let us have natural ponds either.
Oh, wow.
Really?
We want to be able to see it, and it took my wife and I a couple years to really reach out to other crocodilian experts to say, hey, like a concrete pond isn't always the best option.
Yeah.
It can wear and tear on their feet, and they don't want crystal clear water all the time. They like it murky. They're ambush predators. They want to feel safe, especially if they're younger. For ones, they could care less if it's crystal clear or not. But like my babies, if it's crystal clear and it's outside, they stay completely hidden if they can.
Yeah.
So we do have to be a little bit more mindful on that. And it also depends. If I have my big alligator Yorm, he's on exhibit. He has the universal rock trees in there with the vines. It looks all like the bayou swampy vibe because the public want to see that.
Yeah.
Do my kids care about that? Not a bit.
Yeah.
They could care less if there's, moss hanging outside and all that stuff. And if anything, they kind of terraform their environment to what they want it to be anyways. So I could dig them a pond and be like, this is great. And they're just going to start digging what they want. They're going to rearrange they're going to destroy them. Unfortunately, that is kind of the big challenge. And with California, our winters are mild. So if it gets below a certain temperature 3 consecutive nights by state law, I have to bring all my crocodiles and caimans inside.
Okay. Interesting.
So, I kind of did you remember what my big dwarf caimans enclosure, looks like. And so I eventually kind of started doing that, but I ended up utilizing the really giant, gray square stock tanks for temporary holding.
Yep.
That way I could keep the water condition fine, do the filtration, the plumbing easily enough. They had the land area. I can make the barriers, and that's for their winter holding. But outdoors, have all the nice things like all the high grass, the water areas, all the natural sunlight. So, it's going to differ like that.
Yeah.
But
I gotcha.
Cayman will have a lot more plants in there and a lot more coverage than what I give my Niles and alligators, because those guys are out and about basking way more, and the Cayman are just a little bit more shy and reclusive. I also limit a lot of water flow on some of them. As much as the idea of big roaring waterfalls is so appealing, that's not really how they live in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as much as I would love to see big waterfalls on all my crocodilians, they could care less about it. And I try to, within reason, make it as nice and natural for them as I can.
Yeah.
Hyacinth, frog bit, weed, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a picture here really quick of your Morlet's crocodile enclosure, because I thought that was a really cool example of the way that you set these guys up.
I never thought about either, you have to kind of ride that line of having it appealing to people coming to see it, but also work properly for the animal. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, exactly. So the room you guys saw, that's where the sloths lived prior to the pandemic. Those sloths care less if there's the big universal rock wall. It doesn't.
Right.
It's all about creating we wanted to create an immersive aesthetic experience for people, because again, half the battle is making people that come to your place happy.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You're not going to sit there and explain to every single person that, hey, a lot of the posts I'm using are round to make it look jungly. Animals could care less.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Make it look aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
How did you like find Universal Rocks, and like when did you start using them?
So Universal Rocks. So when I was managing one of Jubia's pet stores, and we started building the Reptarium, that was kind of at the height that Barchek built his first Reptarium.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, Darian was like, hey, like I just talked to Barchek and he's using this company, and let's drive the 4 hours down to Dallas and go and meet this guy. And so I was like, okay, sure. I've never heard of it and I've never seen it, but I was interested. And so we drove down there. I met Stuart and his family, and great guy, awesome family. And he just starts showing me around, and I was like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
So for anyone that wants that DIY, like, I mean, for myself, I'm not very crafty when it comes to certain things. Like I've tried carving the concrete. I suck. I so much respect to all those guys that can like texture and paint. I don't have that ability.
Yeah.
But Fox really kind of took away the need to have that to make a nice enclosure, like a really enclosure. And so I was looking at all the stuff, and we talked over time, and Stuart, he makes a lot of custom stuff. He has an eye for that stuff. So every now and then I reach out to him about random things, and I mean the guy could make it. So that was kind of like how I met Stuart. And obviously they purchased a lot of his product. It was starting to go in. And then after I moved out to California and we wanted to transform our sloth area into our sloth house, I talked to my wife. I was like, hey, like there's this company called Universal Rocks. Like, I really think this makes a big difference. And she was on board with it. And we get compliments all the time, like, what is this stuff? Like, this is amazing. But again, so yeah, that's kind of, I mean, it's just like Universal Rock, right?
I love it, man.
Like the stuff. Nice.
Yeah. It's definitely something I want to use in the future.
Yeah.
I got this picture up, so I'll share it here of your Morlet's crocodile. Morty, is that his name?
So Morty is no longer on exhibit. It's now Rosita.
Rosita, okay. Yeah.
Morty
just an awesome enclosure.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, so Morty outgrew the exhibit, which we intended for anyway.
Yeah.
And so now one of our smaller Morlets is about only 4 feet or so, is now on exhibit. He might stay there for the next year or so until he has to move in for the winter, and then we have another Morlets. But I would love to, if we're still at this place, I would love to put like a 3-foot Orinoco on exhibit.
Oh, wow.
Highlight, kind of their big issues surrounding that species, and it really ties in well with South America, all that fun stuff. So yeah,
it's awesome. I love the way that you do, like, and we'll talk about the otter enclosure too, because I definitely want to talk about that. But you've got like different textures. So you got, is this Universal Rocks here in the middle?
The black stuff.
Yeah.
So that's their Dragonstone panel.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And then you've got the wood on the back as well. And I just love how you use like different textures to do the backgrounds of your exhibits. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few different things you can do.
Oh, we lost him. Daniel, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Can you hear us? Daniel, can you hear us? We lost you. Can you hear us? Nope.
Uh-oh.
Did that work? Can we hear you now? Oh.
Uh-oh. Damn technology.
Are we good?
Yeah.
There he is.
I had no idea what happened there, but yeah, different technology. Yeah, as the texturing, it adds a lot of depth to enclosures, but also it's a great way when you run out of material.
Yeah.
It's because I'm like, I don't want to spend the more money on doing this, and it kind of gives it that outdoor rusticy appearance, and people. But
that's awesome. Yeah, it looks really cool. Can you give like a full kind of, and you don't have to go every species, but like kind of your highlight species that you guys have at your facility if somebody was going to come check you guys out?
So when people come to see us, obviously people come to because they want to see the sloths, they want to see the capybaras, they want to see the otters, and every spring we have kangaroo joeys. So people want to come and interact with kangaroo joeys. That's probably the top 4 animals that are super popular for us. We kind of like just force crocodilians to be on exhibit to learn about. So those are the top animals people come to see us about.
That's awesome. Did you guys always have mammals, or like were reptiles first and then mammals, or?
Mammals are my wife's specialty. She's been working on her PhD in sloth ecology.
Oh wow!
Right now, but so she specializes in sloths, big cats, and primates. So she started years ago at the Oklahoma City Zoo, long time ago, and that's areas of expertise. Like she's stupid, wicked smart.
Awesome.
I've always had an interest in mammals, but the mammals I'm interested in, like you rarely even see at zoos, is. And so the aquatics, fish keeping, crocodilians, reptiles, I've always loved keeping those things. And so just kind of the two of us coming together, I've worked with a lot of mammals, but it was just never one of those things that, when I see a sloth, I'm not going to fall on my knees and start sobbing.
Yeah.
You're not, man. That's the reaction that they tend to elicit.
We see it when people come. We open the door, and when 86% and 100% humidity hits them, they just drop their knees and they'll look at the sloth. That sloth could care less. But our sloths know that when we do tours, they get fed blueberries, so they come down at their own free will.
Oh,
they
nice.
let us hand feed them. They tolerate people petting them, but we'd always do strive to make sure that our animals' health and welfare. So it's very much on the animals' terms, not business terms, which some people don't like, but most people respect that.
Yeah.
As they should.
Yeah.
And it's good too that you've got like the blueberry trick, so that they actually, there's a reward for them coming down and hanging out as well, versus like the standard walk through kangaroo exhibit where they have no need to, come anywhere near the people, so they're about 30 yards away all the time.
Nope. Yeah, they just kind of hang around and lay there.
Yeah, they're like, these people don't matter to me, but the sloths actually probably enjoy it because there's something that they're getting out of it.
Yeah. So there's reward for it. And it's also enrichment for them too. It gets them to move. It's exercise. But most of their diet is being like leafy greens and stuff anyway. So it's kind of like a nice. Here you go. And we don't do tours every single day too. We always ensure every animal gets lots of downtime away from people, because the last thing you want to do is an animal just decides, I no longer want to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
And you've lost it and you can't go back. Probably.
Yes. That's not fair to the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like the monitor that gets pulled out of its enclosure, out of its hide, and then never wants to see a human again because of that. So you've put something in its brain that is automatically bad and associates with you. So
yep,
for sure.
So what I know fish keeping is huge, and you've talked about it a little bit, but I've been watching your stories recently. The lungfish seem to have really caught your eye recently. And can you talk us through like what you keep currently, the fascination with lungfish, everything like that?
So that kind of goes back to, I've always had like prehistoric fish.
Yeah.
Lungfish to me are just so awesome. So I have a marbled African lungfish, an albino African lungfish, and this year I acquired an Australian lungfish.
Nice.
Which those only come in, imported from Papua New Guinea like once a year. Wow. And there's so many that you can pick up, and their price just kept going up and up every single year. And so 5 years ago, when I was like, $400, that's expensive, I'm going to wait. And now it's like $1,600. I was like, I'm glad I saved up on the side. I was like, I got to bite this bullet, because who knows if I'll get one ever. So I eat lungfish. I do enjoy my South American river monsters. I have 3 stingrays, so a 2 black diamond and a Matoro. Nice. I have a catfish. I have an almost 3-foot arapaima.
Wow.
I have red belly piranhas. Those guys are on exhibit. I have about a 3.5-foot electric eel.
Wow. That's cool.
We have like a Mabu puffer, like some Basmani rainbows that live with that. I have a couple tiny alligator gar that I'm growing up. I have a platinum biker, like one of the ones that gets like saddled ones.
Nice.
And I have some silver iguanas I'm growing up too. But I mean, as far as fish, goes. That's kind of it.
That's awesome, man. That is so cool.
That's it, he says. As if it's not a massive, insane list of cool shit.
Tank space for what I can give right now. So
Yeah.
Well, my wife will let me know if I get such and such.
See, I'm super obsessed with the South American river monster type stuff as well. I'd love to have a stingray one day. But every time I get a tank set up, I'm like, what kind of turtles could I put in here? And then that just like takes over. So I always end up with turtles in the fish tanks when they should just be fish. So that's my problem.
Turtles are cool.
Yeah. Huge fan. But what kind of, are you doing all like acrylic tanks for those? Are you building any tanks or?
Acrylic is a love-hate relationship for me. It's like I had my big fly river in this.
Oh, awesome.
Right here.
Yeah.
About 575 gallons. And, fly rivers have that spur that's on their fin. And just over time, he just scratched it so badly, you could not see in there anymore.
Oh, gotcha.
I had to completely remove him and all the fish out. I had to get inside the tank. And it took about 12 hours of buffing.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Buffing and buffing and buffing, and it's acrylic holds heat really well, so it was miserable.
Yeah.
So I moved him into an all glass aquarium, like a big one, mind you,
Yeah.
where he can't do that. And it was just I put some of my rays and stuff in there for the meantime. But so I do have a lot of acrylic tanks, just because when I look for tanks on like Marketplace, it's typically the acrylic tank that's available out here, and then it's a little bit more manageable to move.
Mm-hmm.
The other tanks, like my big outdoor tank, is about 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 3 feet deep.
Wow.
And that's glass.
Oh, jeez.
6 of us to move.
Wow.
Do you know how much it weighs?
I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah.
Water viewing area for my 126-pound alligator snapping turtle.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's so cool. Have you done any of like the plywood type tanks, or just sticking with glass and acrylic?
I've done a lot of research into plywood tanks. I've watched a lot of the King of DIY, his channel.
Mhm.
I've talked to a couple of different forums online, and it's just, for the size I want to build, the risk of failure just seems way too high for me.
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple different companies over in Asia about the big fiberglass ones.
Yep.
But again, they have like the big acrylic viewing panels, which is great. But then I have some things like eventually my gar will be big.
Yeah.
Heard about people's alligator gars shredding up the front of their tanks just from rubbing against it. And
Oh, yeah.
so, and then I don't know if you guys ever follow Rusty Reed, the Turtle Man.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Those giant stock tanks he uses. So I talked to him a little bit about those and like what it would be to maybe cut a hole into it and put a big viewing pane. But then I would worry about the structural integrity of that entire failing. So, at this point, I've been kind of following also Ohio Fish Rescue a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk highly about the big fiberglass aquariums and stuff. And so I think that's the next route I would like to go with my next big tank. And I'm hoping to make that one anywhere from maybe 12 feet long, 8 feet deep, and 6 feet tall.
Wow.
Something I'm currently saving up for on the side. Again, fish doesn't make us money or anything, so that's one hobby I save up for over time.
Yeah. It's so sad and frustrating. I'm sure for you guys, especially, that fish and reptiles aren't the showstoppers and the sellers, because we think they're sick and like would love to go see them, publicly or whatever. But
it would make things a lot easier. But granted, like my wife, she loves the mammals. She's into them. She's good with the reptiles and fish, supportive. It's not her cup of tea necessarily.
Yeah.
But she appreciates them. Nothing against them. She likes to look at them at zoos and all that fun stuff. But fish. She's kind of like, oh, okay, cool.
All right, it's a fish.
So is it just you and your wife, or do you have like a team? Or
so we have 9 volunteers,
Okay.
which we are immensely grateful for. They come in, like, it's at least 1 or 2 volunteers that come in a day, and they help with like cleaning the mammals. And a lot of them are here because they want to see the animals, like the capybaras, the sloths, the otters. They want to see and be around those animals. And they don't mind cleaning up after them. They get to feed them and stuff. As far as fish go, I don't really have anyone else mess with the fish, just because some people get really like feed happy with it, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep feeding," and that just leads to so many issues down the line, and just with water quality and your parameters. So, like, if I ever leave out of town, I have like little pre-portioned cups with the date written on it, like dump this in. Like most things are on timers. I do heavy water changes before and then after. And then reptiles, most of our volunteers aren't huge into reptiles, unfortunately. So I got nobody helping me clean anaconda and retic enclosures.
Man, all you have to do is call me. I will be on the first flight out. I promise.
Oh gosh! Well, could have used that help with that green anaconda enclosure this morning, because that was. I'm glad I got it before it went into the filtration system, because that was.
Oh man, I bet.
Yeah. So with animals like that, like, are you relying on filtration, or you're in there cleaning it to like?
So right now, the filtration is just to keep kind of water movement, and like I don't want that water, and it's not like heavy flow or anything like that. But also right now, she's only 9 foot, so she's a very workable size. This is kind of my trial and error stage, where I want to see what is going to work, what is not going to work, because at the Loveland Living Aquarium in Utah, they have like a big green anaconda with a huge school of piranha, like mixed species.
Oh, nice.
Like Earth. When this animal goes to the bathroom, is it not just obliterating the system?
Yeah.
So right now, I'm kind of trying to trial and error it to see, like, how does this work? Is she so active that she's going to dislodge something? I'm going to flood.
Yeah.
Water everywhere. So, but yeah, it's mainly just keep kind of like water circulating, or things like that. Kind of remove any of that surface debris that might happen, stuck shed, anything, and
Yeah. Yeah, I was at the Dallas World Aquarium a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and they had their anaconda, I think, with neon tetras and stuff like that, and some live plants in there. And I always thought it was so cool, but I was like, that's got to be a pain to maintain.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah, well, I can't manage how they keep live plants in there. I mean, they're just all I have to do is lay on it and move, and that entire room is just gonna be ripped out.
Yeah. Even just with Kevin that came in, he's like 3.5, maybe almost 4 foot now, but I can't imagine having anything in the water area that like would be possible to, like, plants or even fish. Like he's just going to kill them and move it and destroy it. So
I can keep mosquito fish and rosy minnows with mine. Once they get so big, they just don't even mess with them.
Yeah.
Out of that, it's just like floating things like water hyacinth and duckweed. I've never been able to keep any kind of rooted aquatic plants with a crocodilian myself either.
Yeah, I had this massive. It was like an elephant. It was some species of alocasia, and it was good for so long. And then I moved it, and he just immediately trampled it. It's now sort of growing out of the water just because I haven't pulled it out yet. But I was like, "What's that?"
Was that in your bog filter?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked you about that because I didn't know they could grow like that, and so.
Yeah. It, I have it in there, and then in that one as well. I have like in Kevin's cage, it's not technically a bog filter. It's like non-active filtration, but the plants just grow out of the water. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome, man. So I guess like from the fish side, what have you kind of taken from the fish community and applied to reptiles? And then I guess conversely, what have you applied from reptiles to fish?
And water quality isn't really something that's always taken into consideration with reptiles, especially on which, these are animals that are living around it. They're drinking from that water source. And so if you can keep learning from just keeping fish, if you keep healthy, good filtered water with your fish, that's only going to help the life and quality of life for your reptile. I mean, it's a no-brainer with amphibians. Most people know with amphibians and newts and stuff, you need good water. But, the same goes for your reptiles. They need just as good quality water as you would keep any of those other animals. Outside of the water quality, I mean, they can be combined, fairly easy given the species and everything. But as far as, reptiles to fish, I don't have nearly as much success, because reptiles are just, I've done a variety of different mixed like species paludarians with like my Chinese water dragon. and things like that. And like my Cayman lizard used to be like in a paludarium setup, and just, I don't feel like my aquariums really thrived necessarily from that. I mean, I had like species of like, crustaceans that really enjoyed the feces.
Right.
Really helped some of the plant life grow, but eventually the plants were never long lived because those animals would swim to the bottom and just rip the substrate, just doing natural foraging behaviors. So, yeah. So again, it's always learning, always trying things out. Experimenting with things to see what'll work, what won't work, what helps things thrive. But
yeah, I think water quality is definitely always something to take away from the fish community. I feel like 3/4 of the problems with turtles that people have is just water quality based. Like if you get your water and your basking temperature right and you have UV, you're pretty good. Other than diet, I mean, diet's a whole can of worms, but the water quality is huge, and I think a lot of people who are reptile people and then get into turtles don't necessarily understand, how to manage that properly. So
I see it all the time with like mata turtles developing things like shell rot and stuff. So we explain to more people, I guess, than about pH and stuff. People mata turtle and they're like, why does it look like the Boston Tea Party? What you're seeing, you explain tannins and pH, biotopes and everything, and then people are like, oh, that makes so much sense. You're like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So
one thing,
turtle needs basic water versus acidic.
Yeah. And that's the Fly River needs more basic water, right? Or is that?
Yeah. So I kept my Fly River's water around a 7.8 to an 8.2.
Gotcha.
Okay. I keep my mata at 6.6.
Wow. How are you managing? Just adding stuff to the water, or how are you?
So like for my mata, I have like Monstera growing out of the water. It helps with the filtration, but as those big leaves just kind of like start falling over and new leaves come, I let those leaves literally break down and rot in the water, and that starts releasing tannins. It lowers the pH. But I'll also go get like the big almond leaves and stuff like that, and I'll throw them in the water. I leave branches and logs in there to decay over time, and that really helps me a lot with just the natural pH. I could always add chemicals if I needed to, but if I can make it as natural as I possibly can, then absolutely will.
Yeah, I gotcha. And then for the Fly River, how are you increasing the pH?
So I'll get like the the pH buffers that you'll see for like the Lake Tanganyika, like the peacock cichlids, all the African cichlids that make the water harder and wet. So I'll use those kinds of salts and stuff to go in the water that dissolve really finely to raise it that way.
Gotcha.
Here's also really hard to begin with. It comes out at like a 7.4.
Okay.
So it's not too much to raise it up, thankfully.
Yeah. That makes it easier. With Fly Rivers, I know that there's a lot of issues that people have, like with shell rot and like different funguses and stuff that they get on their shell. Is the hard water, like, does that help combat that?
So from what I've seen with Fly Rivers, when they start developing funguses, it's typically not only water quality, but the water's too cold.
Oh, interesting.
So they like their water to be in like that 80 to 82 degree range, which, I mean, essentially at that point, you're keeping a fish almost still. You need healthy water. You need proper water temperature. You have to clean out the waste and everything. And sometimes they're really messy eaters. So you have to make sure if you can get that extra waste out, then you should do so. But you'll typically see those fungal issues happen if the pH is not proper, the temperature's too low, or like your nitrates and your nitrites are just all over the place. That just leads to all kinds of health issues since they don't come out on land and bask like other. They can't rely on the sun to kill those infections that are trying to grow.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's like an everything problem is the source of that is. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Fly River, that's a dream species for me for sure. One day I'll make that happen for sure. Can I do it?
They're super rewarding.
Yeah. It's like a aquatic dog almost. It's like following you around and stuff.
Yeah, out of every turtle I work with, like they probably my mata, they have the best personalities.
That's awesome. So what are you feeding both of them?
So the mata, he eats a lot of things like tilapia, frog legs. He'll eat every now and then. I'll get like the extra small quail from Rodent Pro. I'll feed him those. He loves octopus, but that's a very every in a blue moon because there's not enough known about these guys to be like, hey, if you give them octopus like once a week, is it going to cause
Yeah.
remotely close in their diet? But octopus was actually how I got to start hand feeding from me.
Really?
Well, he came to us from a big zoo. He's the very first reptile we took in during the pandemic because he came from a big zoo. This doesn't bring animals in. Sorry, it doesn't bring people in to make money. So we got 3 model during 2020, but all big too. And so, but he was being fed silver shiners. So almost every single night for a year, I would go in there at nighttime and just wiggle strips of tilapia around his head to try to mimic fish, and he just wouldn't. I tried it with octopus, and he took it like right from my hand. And then so every now and then when I go in and feed, he'd start approaching my hand and he would just start eating. So now he just hand feeds, and when tourists come through, I let him tongue feed him and stuff so I can see the vacuum he creates.
Yeah.
With the Fly River, our guy, he likes tomatoes, sweet potato. He likes cucumber, strawberry, grapes, mango, papaya, figs, banana.
Wow.
So he has quite a big variety in his produce. I'll also feed him like the Missouri tortoise diet and the Missouri diet, the stuff that it'll float, just to make sure he's getting all like kind of excess vitamins and minerals he could ever need in his diet.
That's awesome. I didn't know they ate all. I knew they were more like vegetarian and fruits, but I didn't know that they would eat all kinds of stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him eat fish. I tried to not encourage mine to eat fish because at the time I was keeping a ton of African cichlids and I didn't want him to start picking them off one by one. And he got a couple over the course of a couple of years, so not the worst, but I've seen him put some pretty bad bites into fish.
Jeez. Yeah, I heard they can be a little aggressive too.
It can be, especially if you keep multiple together.
Yeah.
They do not do it that way.
It's funny to think about an animal like that being aggressive with something else because it doesn't look like it has a mean bone in its body.
Face.
Yeah. Yeah. The African setup or the African cichlid setup with Fly Rivers is cool. I've seen it done. I've got a local zoo here that does that, and it's a pretty cool setup with all those colors and then this super weird turtle that shouldn't exist.
I do something similar to Aquashella.
Yeah.
A Cichlid Bros does that set, I think.
Okay.
It has like the big universal rock mangrove tree in there, and it looks really cool and sick. And
yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I think I saw that. I think it's the oh god, it's a reptile store in Texas. They have it now. They like in their store. They have that set up. Dave Kaufman just filmed a video, a tour there.
DFW Reptarium.
Yep.
Yeah, I know they just redid their whole place. They moved a couple years ago, and now it's like a whole big thing.
Yeah. And they were saying that they got it from Aquashella or from Custom Cages, who I think did it originally, and then they gave it to them. So yeah, that setup is so sick. I just watched that last night, I think. So fresh in the mind. That's awesome. Just going back to questions here really quick.
I actually, so talking about all these animals, how big is your facility?
So we're on a few acres,
okay,
which is fine for now. But then again, we have animals like kangaroos. Those guys take up large chunks of that.
Yeah.
We want to give them lots of room to roam, all that stuff like that. And a lot of our animals are temperature. Thankfully, we live in a fairly decent sized area. We have like these massive like RV garages too at our disposal to be able to use.
Oh wow.
For winter housing and everything. So, but I mean, our goal is to find a larger property to open up more things to the public, because since we do work a lot with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we house evidence animals for them.
Okay.
Trafficked into the country, into the state. Sometimes they're brought to us, and then they're held there until the case is done. And since they're considered evidence, they can't be like the general public can't see them.
Right.
Like that. It's only the veterinarians, the wildlife wardens, and all that stuff that come in and see those animals. But I mean, there's been times they brought us 74 rattlesnakes at one point.
Oh my god! Wow.
I can't believe some of the animals like that get brought in to this like state, not even just the state, but this country. It is insane.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine being close to the border of Mexico. I hear about all the like monkeys being brought in down there, like the cocaine howler monkeys that have been cut open with drug stuff.
Oh god.
Because you get in less trouble if you're caught with a primate than drugs. So It's getting pretty sad. It really is a situation for all these animals, and then trying to work with other countries to export them back is almost impossible at this point.
Yeah.
Over here, they don't want them back.
Yeah.
So you just hope you can find zoos or good places to send these animals to so they can live out the rest of their life. Or because nothing we never put anything back into pet trade because big chunk of it comes from illegal pet trade.
Yeah. What's like your relationship, I guess, then to like the reptile hobby, like person? And you don't have to. If it's controversial, you don't have to.
It's not controversial. I have more of a foot in the zoo world than I do the reptile not even the hobby. It's almost an industry now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of friends in like the reptile industry, and it's wonderful. I enjoy reptile expos. I enjoy talking to keepers. I enjoy personal species that I keep a reptile.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. But it does get tricky sometimes because people are doing things they're not supposed to, and sometimes at expos, Fish and Wildlife does something. They're like, "Oh, well, you guys are licensed. Here you go." And we're like, "We don't want it."
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And all these vendors are looking at us like, "You're the problem. You're not. You're supposed to be with us." I'm like, I wasn't trying to sell a green mamba to a 13-year-old like animal.
Yeah.
And so it's like we see with all the time with oxalotls out here.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're illegal out here. They don't want them hybridizing with the populations of tiger salamanders and whatnot. And when animals get confiscated, it's like the fingers and it just sucks, and it makes their intentions, will like sit there and like stare at you like you're a Fish and Wildlife dog or an agent. With the amount we already pay every month for all these abandoned sulcata tortoises, like I don't want any more animals.
Yeah.
Unless you're a horribly cared for, mite-ridden thing you're trying to sell under the tail. So I mean it does cause some controversy, especially when you go to expos where like in a state women are legal.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about these animals, then you're kind of trying to teach people like, hey, just because you're going to see one at a table over there, don't I'll teach you guys like why this isn't a great thing. And one of the points I always bring up is out of the thousands of these things that have been brought into the U.S. every year imports, why are we not seeing all these adults everywhere?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you just see like that look of, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, especially smooth fronts. We have a 3-foot male I bring to programs, and he does great. But I always tell like, who here has ever seen a 6-footer in person?
Yeah.
And people are like, I've never. And it's like, yeah, because people kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just people aren't doing their research. They don't set them up how they need to be set. It's an animal that doesn't need a harness on it and to be kissed on the face. It's a wild animal that can cause. I mean, you keep Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin has good days and bad days, I'm sure. And
yeah.
So I mean, it does kind of get a little tense in that perspective.
Yeah.
You do see all these reptile industry, wildlife influencers that promote a very different message, and you're trying to combat that in a way where you're using yourself to promote animals, not using animals to promote yourself.
Yeah.
And so that is taken very well, but more than not nowadays, it's like,
Yeah.
Can I hold it? No, I don't. People they want their videos, but
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's when I say don't always meet your heroes, I've met some of those wildlife people on YouTube, and I'm like, you know nothing.
Yeah.
Wow. Like video editing, but man.
Yeah.
Up for you for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess more there's good ones and bad ones, just like in anything,
Yep.
Yeah. I used to think like I was like, oh, it must just be so easy to like look good on camera. But now that we started the podcast, like I will say it props to them because they're doing it somehow they're doing that because it would be hard.
They're killing it. My wife gives me like, everyone's like, why don't you guys have a YouTube channel? And I'm really bad with talking with my hands, or I have issues always making eye contact with the camera. I just Ricky bobbing it. We just like start,
Yeah.
Like, I can't. So that definitely is a talent. So props to those guys that know how to interact with their audience. They're good, and
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do it. But there is a lot of people out there who, are promoting something that they probably shouldn't be promoting. So, yeah. And honestly, you're out there spreading the good word. Like it's very hard. Like I feel inclined a lot of times, like when people, because with Kevin, I get a good amount of people who ask me about getting dwarf caiman and stuff like that, and I always feel bad saying like, no, you probably shouldn't get this when I have one, and it's like it's a really hard like scenario to handle. And so I can't imagine for you guys where it's the same situation. You guys have them, but granted, a lot of them are from zoos or rescues. But it's hard to go up there and tell somebody they shouldn't when you guys do, but for good reason.
It definitely does. We get asked that all the time. Well, why can you?
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm state and federally licensed. I'm inspected. Like they come, they measure his exposures. We have veterinarians that look at your animal's health, and if it's not healthy, you can get written up. So it's like I'm inspected on a state and federal level.
Yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, so if you're willing to put in all the work and you're willing to have Fish and Wildlife and USDA inspectors come into where you live, where you occupy, to inspect every inch of what they want, then like nothing should stop you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm research papers come out and I'll read papers. I'm reading articles like what was 10 years ago with things have changed for a lot of animals. And it's always a constant learning thing. And, I do tell people that, this is not a job for me. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing as a sick day. There's not an off day. If it's Christmas morning, like I'm not running downstairs, like, oh my gosh, I got a PS5. It's like, huh, well, let's go care for feed animals.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't change anything about it, but it is a lot of work and responsibility that goes into these animals, and some people take it very well. They're like, well, where are places I can go? Where can I learn?
Yeah.
Refer people to different zoos and stuff that have volunteer positions that really let you get in depth with at least getting your feet wet with these animals.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing too, like once an animal, especially a crocodilian, once it's over a certain size, like you need some level of training in order to like be able to handle something like that. Otherwise you're going to have, missing fingers or worse, like if it hits an artery or something, it could do some serious damage.
And even the most, some of the most professional like keepers out there, like Greg Graziani.
Yep.
Alligator he's worked with for years, it took his hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
From a slight training mishap. I mean, they're very powerful animals. So with us, we're very firm believers in shift training.
Yeah.
For my big 11-foot male, we can bring out his crate. I tap 3 times on it. He walks in all on his own.
Oh, wow.
I don't have to wrestle him, jump him, or, because he doesn't want that. No crocodile wants that. And stress is the number one big killer of crocodilians. And so a lot of zoos have resorted to shift training their animal. That way keepers can go in, safely clean, and as least stress as possible. Then they open up the shift, animal can go back and forth as it wants. So, I mean, 10 years ago, this wasn't something I was ever taught.
Yeah.
Hey, if you want it off exhibit, you got to jump it. You got to tape it. Like, you got to hog tie them. I mean, I get in a pinch if you're trying to rescue something in a neighborhood, and props to Gator Boy Chris doing all the awesome stuff he does. But again, that's a professional that knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of training that goes into big guys in order to work with them in a safe manner. But it's always about putting that animal safety first too.
Yeah. I'm sure you get this all the time, but people always ask me if Kevin's nice and like if I just pick him up and hold him and all that kind of stuff. And I'm always like, no. I mean, he's not like, out to get me, but I'm definitely not trying to pick him up because that's not what he wants.
We get it. We'll be on stage. I don't have a 2-foot alligator. People can come and take a closer photo and they're like, oh, he loves you. I'm like,
no.
This animal could care less.
Yeah.
They're tolerant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tolerating every level of interaction. If it no longer tolerates this, then then it's done for the day, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but all the time people ask us if we cuddle them, if we kiss them. No. Strongest bite forces in the planet. I'm not kissing this thing on the side.
Yeah. It's not happening. Yeah.
I've seen commonly tempered ones that tolerate it. Good for them, but I will never risk that.
Yeah. 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 It's like for me, unless I have to move him, like there's no point in me putting my hands on him. And honestly, like I eventually will want to do something like you're doing with the alligator as far as shift training, but I got to have the space in order to put a crate in there, you know? But I would prefer to do that eventually, because right now, if I have to move him, it's, you know, a hand capture. But even still, it's like, it's not long term, you know, it's like very short, brief, catch him, holding container, and then I can usually just let him out of the holding container into his enclosure. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah. But I definitely would love to avoid having to capture him in the future. Not necessarily like for any other reason other than just, you know, stress for him, because it's much less stressful just to walk into a box than, you know.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's not fun for anybody. But yeah, that's you guys are in a really cool position that I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, it's their dream to have a facility like what you guys have and be able to teach people and have these animals on exhibit. But I completely get the hardships that come along with that and the weight of the responsibility of having a facility.
It's tough, but you know, it is very, very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like with us, now I have a daughter who turned 1, but so her priority is up high, but then after her, like our animals come first. If there's ever hard times during the pandemic, we always made sure our animals ate before we did.
Yeah.
You know, these animals didn't ask to be brought into captivity. They didn't ask to leave or anything. So you really have to do what's right with animals. And there have been animals that have been brought to us that I personally would have loved to keep, but I knew we were not the best fit for that animal.
Yeah.
So that they would be so much better off at another zoo and to another place. And it sucks, but you know, that was what was best for them. And you know, at the end of the day, the only other thing that's better than that is if an animal gets rehabbed to be able to go back to the wild. That's the best case scenario. But yeah, we don't have any native crocodilians here in California.
I remember my grandparents used to live in LA. And when we were young, they've got it at the LA Zoo now. I can't remember the name of the alligator, but it was Reggie is the name. Yeah, it was a big news story. He was like out in the wilds of LA somehow. But I just remember that being the wildest thing when I was a kid.
They're all over here. Fish and Wildlife catches them up and brings them to places, and yeah, they're a potentially highly invasive species. We already have invasive common snapping turtles here. So
it's crazy because the only turtle you guys have is the Western pond turtle, right? Native.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the Western pond turtle, but then we have the desert tortoise down south.
Okay.
That'll be just about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm sure red-eared sliders are all over the place there, and with the commons.
Belly sliders, map turtles, occasional alligator snapping turtle. We've got 5 of those guys.
That's awesome.
A couple of them were found walking down the street. Like
crazy.
So yeah. They're trying to stop it from becoming Florida 2.0.
Yeah.
And they're failing. Unfortunately.
That's tough. That is so tough. And it comes down to probably a few bad apples who are, you know, telling people that these common snapping turtles are small animals. And
they get shipped in all the time. So every Christmas, Fish and Wildlife gets so many animals in through the mail, because I think that's when people try to time the shipments, like, oh, they're not going to notice it. And I didn't notice. I guess Fish and Wildlife here has a dog that can smell for certain reptiles.
Interesting.
Wow. And that's how and I think it's just a beagle, but it found common snapping turtles, alligator snapping turtles. They also have a big problem here with venomous.
Okay.
People they're either brown boxing it, where it's just like an unlabeled, like typical box, no live animal, no hole punctures for air. Labeling it as like a ball python. And, you know, every now and then USDA and stuff, they'll do their random checks. Something comes up weird. And like one of the Fish and Wildlife ones, he got bit by a cobra.
Jeez.
Holy shit.
Bag and everything. And you're just like,
yeah.
No, I wish I could have. They're shipping and their means of trying to get these animals.
Yeah.
I know a large handful of keepers.
Oh, we lost you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I mean, I just know a lot of responsible venomous keepers, but shipping something like that, either mismarked or unmarked, that's incredibly irresponsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I think it's now you have to do like through like an airline, right? Like you have to go pick it up or something.
So typically for some Delta, Southwest, I know, like West, just because they were too large to go through like FedEx or anything like that. And I see people go through Southwest for like shipping dogs, cats, like whenever they're shipping across the country. So I would imagine an airline does do that, and they are getting a little bit tighter at screening, which is how they're finding all these animals that are coming into the country. I guess they found like 6 giant Chinese salamanders get brought in through LA.
What the hell, man?
I have no idea what happened to them or anything, but I just know we didn't get them, sadly. I mean, so yeah, they're really tightening up on that stuff because, I mean, we have in Southern California, they have like wild populations of servals now. They're starting wild populations of certain like monkeys. People are bringing them across from Mexico and then just dumping them. And so it's definitely becoming an issue in certain parts of California. Where I'm up at, I'm like an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a little bit too, it gets too cold in the winter for a lot of those animals to thrive.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's tough. Like, it's not tough. It's just, all the irresponsible people involved in the industry. But, like living in an area that, Southeast Texas or Southern California or Florida, where these animals can thrive, it's like at some point they're going to get out there just because of the irresponsible people. Like we can't really, those people don't want to learn, they are doing what they know it's illegal pretty much. And so it's like there's no defense for these areas that could have these animals, thrive, because it's just going to happen because of these people. And I feel like even if it was, even if we did completely outlaw, a lot of these species, I don't even know if it would help, because then the smuggling would just get even worse and you'd have more of these people. So,
and it really doesn't help that states weren't designed to combat this issue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fish and game wardens, like they're here to do like hunting season, fishing, like whatever that is. Someone that's bringing in like this crazy exotic species from like Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So they don't know what they're doing if they see like a 7-foot water monitor.
So
unfortunately, I mean, it is a rapidly growing problem that it could be managed a little bit better. And, in some ways I do agree with like Florida's licensing, how there's different tiers of being permitted. I do feel like if you can prove that you have the space, the knowledge, the experience you can provide for certain animals, I feel like there are animals that should be allowed to be kept. Like for us, like our freshwater stingrays are a restricted species in California. I'm licensed for them out here, but they're not going to survive if they're let go out here.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, and there are some things that are really strict, others that are way more lax. We're actually very relaxed out here in California on reptiles.
Really?
Like monitors, ticks. You can legally own up to 2 species of all the native rattlesnake species without a permit.
Wow.
So, super relaxed in some aspects, but fish, mammals, and now that USDA governs birds, there's a lot more restrictions on things. But so I do feel like it would take time, but there's a way of compromise.
Yeah.
With keep it, but like you said, even if they do allow people to keep something a certain way, licenses and permits require paying fines, fees to do so, and people aren't going to do that. And at the end of the day, they're still going to do whatever they want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Which is sad that we even have to think about that. It's tough when, there's potential legislation or, just the issues caused to the environment that are happening that like we feel a weight of responsibility in, just because it's our hobby. And, any other hobby you take, like knitting or like, whatever hobby, but there's no, like, they don't have this other side, they're not always looking out for new legislation to drop or oh no, somebody, released, there's a breeding population of water monitors in Florida now. Like, and that's super stressful for us because we know that like, that's not just going to be the water monitors. When there is legislation, it's going to be a lot more included in that. And like, how's that going to affect us? And, we're the type of people who's not going to do this illegally. So, the people who are, should be punished aren't necessarily the ones who are going to be punished from, legislation. So
it's unfortunate that way. And it really is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's even been talks about certain governing agencies, and this is all just talks about governing venomous large constrictors, crocodilians, and monitors, because some things are just getting so out of hand. Like they're realizing, like, hey, this 16-year-old kid has a 26-foot python. Like, this actually exists. It's in a residential neighborhood, so that causes a lot of panic and fear with people. So fortunately, a lot of states are also facing all kinds of backlash from that, because they need to start updating laws. Like they feel they start updating their laws because, again, reptile keepers do not make up the majority of the population.
Yeah.
And there's not enough proper education out there. That's talking about these animals, the good things about them, the bad things about them. Because that's any. We love capybars here in North America. They don't really care for them down there. They're a pest. They get crops, their farms, they eat their produce, and they're treated like we treat raccoons and coyotes. So every animal, there's good and bad. And but I mean, you just look at some of the people. Again, there's great educators out there, but you look at some of these wildlife educators, and it's like conservationist has become like the biggest word ever. I can't say how many people say like, "Oh, I'm a conservationist." It's like, what are you actually doing for conservation?
Right.
Like you're educating people about the animals, which is great, but you're not doing anything for conservation, And I think it's just a fancy word that makes people feel like I'm doing something good. In reality, it's like, no, you're not really. But and that does, like, for jobs like what we do, like it does make our job, because like for me, I don't allow certain size crocodilians. Like I don't care how old the kid is. I don't care if it's his birthday. It's not safe.
Right.
To do that. And so they're like, well, I'm just going to go to this guy and he'll let me hold it. Like, and sure enough, he gets hurt, and all of a sudden it's everyone's issue, not just it. So it is becoming more and more challenging. And as we go to more and more expos, we are finding almost like more of a resistance to wanting to learn.
Yeah.
which
seems that way.
Yeah, it's like everyone feels like they've been on YouTube long enough to know everything about the world, and they don't need somebody else telling it to them. Yeah.
And so we talk a lot about it, especially with our sloths, because like sloths are all believed to be potentially an endangered species now, all 6 species, and it's because of people's love for sloth is actually leading to their decline in the wild. Because people are going to Costa Rica, South America, and they want to hold these animals that don't want to be held, and as a result, they pass away from stress. But people, they want their photo op, they want the video, they want the likes, the attention, because once they pass off the sloth, like, mission accomplished, they got what they needed.
Yeah, exactly.
People's ecotourism has lots of pros, but it's also, we're starting to see all kinds of downfalls of ecotourism.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too, man.
It is sad. I'm not like I like sloths. They're cool animals. I'm not like a sloth lover, but just like when you hear stuff like that, the stats, you're like, damn, like that sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Run away from you.
Yeah, especially when like we've talked about earlier about like the big YouTube guys or whatever. Whenever they get a species and they throw it on the video about how cool it is to keep, and especially species that guys like us know is not the best for your run-of-the-mill guy to keep, and it's getting hundreds of thousands of views and clicks and shares. It's just like, man, you look at like the backside of that, and it's just like, it's going to end up a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, like like retic, even sulcatas, huge issue. There's quite a venomous trade is growing exponentially. But there's also cool things that are growing, like all the micro gecko species are growing, and like that's some really cool stuff that people are like, David, I think it's Utera. Yeah, like I've seen that guy at expos, and his setups are so cool, and he'll like sit down and talk to you just about everything he's doing. It's really amazing work he's doing. He's trying to bring these other species that are way more manageable to light. That are not only are they affording to keep, they're manageable to keep, they're pretty to keep. So trying to get people away from that typical like, oh, I want a tegu.
Right.
I want a blackthroat monitor. As great as I love blackthroats, like that is not the lizard for everybody.
No, sir.
And so yeah.
There's a good trend going on too where people are trying to, and that's why we kind of started the podcast, was to talk just about like enclosure design and stuff, and it's a growing trend because a lot of people want to have naturalistic setups, and that seems to be a good trend going forward, and less animals, more focus on the enclosures. And I think those micro geckos and like what Herp Time Armin is doing with the anoles, I think is really cool, because that's again something that you could have in your apartment or whatever, and you could provide a lot more for something like that than you would be able to like a bearded dragon. Like bearded dragon's like the most common first pet lizard, but it's a big lizard and it needs space, and the 40-gallon breeder is not big enough for it. So I think there's definitely a good trend there for sure, which I'm happy about. So
that's why I push the cat gecko so much, man.
Cat geckos are cool.
They're the perfect pet gecko. They're insane. They're the perfect for anybody. Anybody can keep them.
Where geckos go?
Sorry, you went out. What'd you say?
I only have 2 leeches and a leopard gecko, but I mean that's all I have as far as gecko. I have like 4 of those dubia arboreal enclosures I need to put together, but I don't have any space to put them anywhere.
Yeah,
those are great enclosures.
Yeah, they are. I want to try some out, man.
Yeah,
their newer models are really good. They've troubleshot some issues, and newer ones are holding up pretty well. My only recommendation would just be siliconing the heck out of the bottom.
Gotcha.
I have my emerald tree boa in one of their bigger ones, and it just with the mist and fogging going to keep it humid, like the little crease at the bottom didn't seam together the way I needed to, and it just drips.
Oh man.
If I want to take it apart, I have to destroy that entire bioactive substrate, and that thing hates to be even looked at. So I mean, I keep a container under it, and I dump it every like couple days or so to prevent that. But I would just silicone, and they're solid enclosures.
Yeah, and it's a good need too. Like it's filling a good need in the hobby, which is affordable caging, and flat pack shipping and caging. Because you get an Exoterra and you start getting up into those bigger sizes, you're spending an exorbitant amount of money, and you can't get it shipped.
It cracks. Like I had to remove that pane of glass, and so I have quite a few. I mean, I think I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 12 or 14 of their enclosures.
Oh wow! Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, they're great for us because we get the random surrenders of like a leopard gecko, the ball python. So they work great for quarantine, temporarily keeping until we can find somewhere else for those to go. So they're really beneficial for us in that way. And I've also experimented with some of them. I made one of them into a paludarium with one of the low boys from ZooMed.
Oh wow!
Oh, okay.
Cut out half of the bottom of the black PVC, so one half of it on the ground level, that's like bioactive and everything, and then I like silicone cork bark around the edge so it had that like lip.
Yeah.
It goes into like the aquatic base, and that's where I keep one of my lungfish, and that's how I keep my lychee.
Huh.
Oh wow,
that's awesome.
And I mean, that was just me experimenting around because I like these dimensions line up perfect, and really cool.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try that out for some turtles. I think.
Yeah, man,
that'd be cool for young turtles.
Yeah, no, I started out initially with a baby mata turtle.
Yeah,
those are shallow enough. It worked great for it. But then, like once it grew up and everything kind of outgrew it, I was like, well, what else am I going to put in here that's going to thrive in, not massive amounts of waters? And the lungfish don't live in crazy deep water all the time anyway. And so now they just do really well. But he's also about to move out too, because he went from 6 inches to now he's almost 2 feet.
Oh, wow.
So, wow. I don't know. Like, might put some kind of crazy different species of crawfish down there that can live by itself and just not kill fish, or I don't know. I thought about like trying to do something like mud skippers or like.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll see. I like messing around with their aquariums, like, their terrariums, and kind of doing different things with them to see what I can do.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's at a price point too, where if you mess things up too badly, like it's not the end of the world. So,
well, thankfully they've sent me out some of their defective boxes.
oh, nice.
So like when I saw the damaged piece of that PVC, I was like, how can I fix this? And that's when I thought, hey, I'll kind of cut it in half, dispose of that part, and make it the water access for the planetarium.
Nice.
So
you had to do something. That's awesome. That is so cool. I think we definitely got to talk about the otter exhibit.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I would love if you could kind of give us an overview of what the exhibit looks like and how you built it, like what kind of designing went into it. I'm sure there's a lot there.
So I've worked quite a bit with like our North American river otters in the past and everything, and I've worked some with the Asian because we have Asian small cod species. So I've worked with some of those in the past too, and so I knew I was dealing with a very intelligent, very mischievous species, but they have exceeded any expectation I could have possibly ever made about them. They make monitors look dumb.
Wow.
They're so smart. They're incredible problem solvers, and we only have the 3. So let's go out to see them quick.
Nice.
I have made some changes to that enclosure as time goes on because of how destructive they are with things. Just how, again, this was the first time I've ever built an otter enclosure, so I wanted it to look somewhat natural. I wanted it to have that vibe or feeling to it.
This is so cool. We're getting live action. Oh, what's up, y'all?
Those are my little devils. I don't know if you can see with how bright it is. So
yeah,
you kind of see that's a giant universal rock pond right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of their giant like waterfalls that goes into it. I mean, like the wood over there, the rock walls going around and around. Honestly, I ran into a lot of issues with their filtration because otters like to store things. And so I would wake up at nighttime hearing this massive, like shrieking, like high pitched noises because they had clogged the skimmer with
Oh yeah,
and food. And so the skimmer, like it wasn't able to pull water. And so you just hear the pump just whirring, trying to pull a prime, and it would just burn out the pump. And it was just got to the point where it was ridiculous. So I tried it some different ways to keep water circulation. The waterfall works really, really nicely for how it is. Unfortunately, given that I have yet to figure out an effective filtration system, that I dump that water once every 2 weeks, pressure wash, disinfect it.
Oh,
And
wow.
thankfully, they don't go to the bathroom in the water or anything like that. But they do like to dig, and they get very dirty and muddy, and they swim in the water. So they just naturally make it just dirty.
Yeah.
But they do spend most of their time on land, and so I know they like to dig. They dug tunnels like all around there. Oh my gosh. I'm glad when I built the enclosure, once I put up the initial framework, I laid lots of mesh down, staked it down. That way they couldn't dig underneath. They're smart enough to find the stakes and pull them out.
wow.
And teach that behavior to each other. So all you see them do is just digging down, feeling around, and like pulling out stakes and moving over. It's constant.
They're like slowly disabling the entire or disassembling it.
Almost every day doing something. I used to have like a big water slide in there for them and everything like that. And once they realized that they can slide off it, it's like they didn't like it.
What?
It's like that kid at the park that just wants to run up the slide. Like they would run up the water slide, and then when they wanted to go down it, they'd stick their claws and like kind of waddle down it. It was the weirdest thing. Or they jump up on the waterfall ledge and just dive like Pocahontas it into the water. And they kept trying to get up to the higher shade cloth to jump into the water. So it's just, oh my gosh! Like, I understand why zoos just do the big finished like concrete Cabela's set up for them because they're such destructive animals.
Yeah.
Go bamboo in there for them, and they don't even let it get an inch out of the ground before they shred it to nothing. So like when we do our interactions and everything with them, because otters are honestly kind of jerks. Oops, I figure turn me around, but so we let people come in here. They stick their hands through the holes right there. You can like hold hands with them.
Oh,
We let people tongue feed them and everything. Um,
that's so cool.
but yeah, they're pretty mischievous guys. But Universal Rocks, some of their stuff holds up really well to them, some of it doesn't, and that's something we have. I've worked with Universal Rocks and everything before, like, hey, like, can we try this? Can we try that? They've been awesome with, kind of working with me on that. So some of their floating products, it's exposed foam underneath because it's floating. They will shred the foam to nothing.
Oh, okay.
And so I've had them ask them to coat underneath with the same material they use on top.
Yeah.
That can't get to it. So there's been some modifications on that end. But granted, the area is probably like a 50 by 50 foot area. So they use every square inch of it. It's the next enclosure I build for them, though, it is going to be done completely differently. And I would like to convert that giant pond into a pond for my water monitor.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
My wife is not about that. So I mean, for what it'll go to an animal to some extent. Maybe I'll turn that into like what my dwarf caiman's like water area.
Yeah.
Like maybe that, because it makes a great display pond and everything. It goes like 6 feet deep.
Wow.
And so it'll get repurposed for something. But yeah, I think a concrete company, and I've watched Camp Kennan's videos on how he made his concrete ponds.
Yeah.
I initially did one of my alligator ponds, and I'm not good at concrete. I don't know how you texture it, and we also get earthquakes out here. So once I built my pond, it only lasted 2 months before it like formed like these micro cracks from an earthquake, and
Oh, wow.
I had to have it resealed and everything, which cost about $6,000, and just
Wow.
Oh my God.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever there's water in something, it becomes significantly more complicated. Like
Mm-hmm.
Water, and if you have to add filtration to it, that is such a complex thing. Granted, the filtration on the otters can be just as simple as keeping water moving, because granted, if they're just drinking water, it's not as big of a deal. It's not like the turtles and the amphibians and the fish that
Yeah.
rely. They can drink water from the tap, even though we don't do that. It all goes through multiple stages of filtration, like calciums, like all that stuff, to diminish the fluoride calcium stuff in the water for them. But it's not as big of a deal to have like the filtration that would be needed to support fish. Now, fish in there with them because they kill everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That'd be an expensive dinner.
I mean, they eat like 3 times their body weight every day as is.
Oh
So
my God.
Wow.
full for Asian food markets.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're nothing compared to like our birds of prey. Our owls eat probably about $140 worth of rodents a week.
Oh my God.
So our 4 owls eat more in a week than all my crocodilians do in a month.
That's insane.
That is insane. Yeah.
Yeah, so if
That's
anyone
so wild.
want to get into birds of prey, being reptiles are expensive. They blow reptiles out of the water.
That's crazy. I didn't know they ate that much.
They have to eat every single day, and they have to maintain a certain body mass, and they just burn energy so quick. They drop weight so quick. So I mean, like our great horned owl is eating like 3 small rats every single night.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's more than I feed Kevin in a week. So, well, not small. I guess I feed him medium rats, but still, like, he's only getting 2 a week. So that's crazy.
It's a lot, but
Yeah.
I mean, they're most to work with.
Yeah, it's worth it, but that's crazy. It's funny how little crocodilians have to eat in order to continue growing. It's kind of absurd, actually.
I mean, there's all kinds of awesome channels that talk about how they don't need to eat that much. I mean, my big guy Yorm, that big alligator, he only eats one of those goat kids maybe once a week.
Yeah.
And that's it. And with our winter here, he doesn't touch food from November to May, and he doesn't lose a pound.
It's crazy.
So, very, very manageable as far as feeding goes.
Yeah.
Though not the same.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what are you feeding the otters then? Just a lot of fish and stuff, or?
Tilapia, freshwater snails, freshwater clams, crab, crawfish, squid, octopus, mussel.
Wow. Everything.
They'll eat chicks. They'll eat eggs, quail. They'll eat rodents, frogs. So
Do they eat any fruit at all, or?
So you can give them fruit for enrichment, like apples and sweet potato are good for enrichment. Just give them something else to mess with. In the fall time, we'll throw pumpkins in the pond for them, and they'll like rotate over them and chew them and push them around. But we don't do a ton of like really sugary fruits or anything, like no strawberries, blueberries or anything. Mainly stuff that's kind of universally safe for most animals to ingest without issues.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That enclosure is badass.
Yeah, it is.
When you first completed it, I was like, that is a work of art. It's a zoo exhibit. It's awesome.
I appreciate it. You know, that first photo of an enclosure is always pristine, and then the animals just go into it and they make it a home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as the animals are happy and healthy, that's what's most important. But
Yep.
when you plant bamboo in an enclosure and you see them running around with the entire stalk, dragging the root trails around with them, you're just yelling at them like they're like a dog just brought in a dead animal to the house. You're like, and they're just making it even bigger. It's pretty tedious, but you know.
Yeah. I just redid Kevin's enclosure a couple weeks ago, and he decimated it very shortly after. And I was like, it looked so good. It was so perfect for you. But
As long as you have that photo,
yeah.
that's all that'll matter.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That's awesome. How long did it take you to build that?
Not including the time it took me to like have the Universal Rock and stuff shipped out. It really only took me maybe about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because I would be doing programs and tours and stuff like that, and then like I'd spend a few hours working on each day. And once you like my wife and I, we spent a lot of time planning out what we want it to look like. And I mean, it sounds way more complicated than what it is, but I mean, like literally the moment you start throwing up Universal Rock, it goes from just like fenced walls to all of a sudden it's a habitat.
Yeah.
That really does make like the world of difference, I think. In that, you don't have to use that. People do like they paint the murals as the background, and it looks great and everything. So there's a whole wide range of things you can do to make something look aesthetically pleasing. I like the inside of one of my water monitor enclosures. It has like the rustic palette style on the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, like it looks, it's aesthetically pleasing, and he could care less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just up to the person. But yeah, I mean, once I had everything kind of mapped out how I wanted to, and I had all the materials, it was just kind of chiseling away at it between tours and programs, like just every day until it got to the point, and then yeah, just kind of trying to anticipate what these animals are going to do. And I thought I had a better grasp at it, and within 24 hours, they showed me, oh, this is what we can really do. And it's been going for almost 2 years.
Wow.
So they keep me on my toes.
Yeah, 3 weeks is very impressive getting that done. That's
for sure.
That is a lot of work in 3 weeks.
Like an opening date, because people were coming for the sloth house and everything, and that's Otter Outpost. So that's a whole different experience if people want to.
Okay.
Kind of said, hey, Otter Outpost opens this tight. I'm like, oh, I have a deadline.
Yeah.
I had to meet that deadline, and people were already making the reservations for the booking, and I was like, oof.
Yeah. You got people not to let down.
And the animals were just about to finish their quarantine time anyway, and so I was ready to get them on exhibit so they could just be enjoying life.
Yeah. I have. It's a very small project in comparison, but I've been building a turtle, like a terrace turtle pond type setup, and it's taken all of my energy for the past like 4 weeks, I would say. So I can't imagine doing all of that in 3 weeks. That's insane.
It's it keeps me. Summer's a very, very busy time, and the winters that kind of like when I can relax a little bit because it rains here, doesn't snow in the winter, so I can't really do construction in the winter. So that's kind of like I just grind during the spring, summer, fall, and then just kind of relax a little bit more in the winter. But
did you were you like experienced with like carpentry and stuff before you started doing all of this, or did you like kind of learn it as you went?
so I used to, years ago, I used to have like an Etsy, and I would make like rustic furniture pieces because where that there was like a lumber yard, and they would just throw away like massive like trunks of trees that if you paid the membership fee, they would just pick it up with the crane and they'd run it through the mill for you and just cut whatever you wanted.
Oh wow!
You paid $50 a month for your membership. You could go in there with chainsaws, sawzalls, cut and take whatever you need. You're essentially cutting down this place's disposal fees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was making like rustic end tables, coffee tables, dining tables, and so I kind of started working like that, and that's why I really like the rustic type theme stuff, because rustic doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Right. Yep.
You know, you see some of those guys, and it's impressive how perfectly level and plain something is. With me, I've never had access to that kind of high-end equipment, so it's always been like make work what I can make work. Now, sanding using a planer, like whatever, I know how to do that. But I just kind of started with building stuff like that, and then I started getting into building my own enclosures. At one time, I used to keep 30 reticulated pythons.
Wow.
Younger, I was oh yeah, I was younger. I was like early 20s, and I was like, I want to breed retics, and
Yeah.
and I was just building all these like massive plywood enclosures, and maybe that's what turns me off from the plywood aquariums, because as much as I sealed those enclosures, over times the retic's urine would just rot through.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it has to do with the acidity of it and everything like that, just dissolving and breaking down. Because PVC, I didn't really know what PVC was at that point. So I was just building the wood and plywood enclosures, sealing them as best I could, framing it in for the structural support, and custom ordering the glass with like the plastic railing system to build all these big like 6x12x6 enclosures and stuff, until eventually I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So I kind of started doing that, and then as I went through my degree, in zoo science, you get a really good inside look. They teach you about why zoos build the way they build. And you'd be surprised, as much as an enclosure might look like it's to keep an animal in, a lot of enclosures are designed to keep people out.
Yeah.
And so I took what I learned from that, and then I started applying and researching into zoos in Germany and Europe. Europe zoos are years ahead of what we have. They use all kinds of different like it's the Hagenbeck method and everything, and that was a brilliant zoological architect who kind of created that whole idea about enclosures without barriers. When you look into like the open tiger safari, but there's like a 40-foot moat that separates guys. It's really, you're trying to create a habitat that doesn't necessarily look like a cage. Cages are very effective and everything, but the public doesn't like to see that, and it's not very enriching to some of the animals' lives. So I really started looking at all these other places, and just, Pinterest is great. You can see all kinds of ideas and get inspiration, and then you start connecting with other people. And then, like when I moved out here and stuff, with my wife having a zoological background and stuff too, like granted, I've never built an enclosure for a sloth. So that was just us both. She'd done work at other AZA zoos before, kind of guiding them on, hey, your sloth needs this, it needs that, it needs this. And so kind of with her, guidance and my experience and abilities, we kind of put together what our sloth house is now. So, there definitely has been a lot of learning that goes in with it. I'm very DIY. I have no professional construction background, anything like that. It's all just been self-taught stuff.
Yeah.
So, which does make it harder, because when people ask, how do you do this? I don't necessarily know how to explain it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah. I feel like most of the time it's like, well, I did it. That's I just figured it out.
And stuff. I mean, like my pond liner's still holding up.
Yeah.
Which is to me a miracle, because I've always just imagined he's just going to rub the face right along it. It's just going to.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's worked. But again, that was just like, well, I kind of did this, and it's kind of worked out for me. So
yeah. Yeah.
Again, almost different. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out that way if I built it like that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The pond liner was a saga for me. The teeth immediately, it was probably about 6 months, and then there was water all over the floor, and I said, what happened here? And had to go I got like this concrete cloth. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I actually watched your thing on that. They kind of like, you drained it and like you put it up, you let it cure and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I've looked into that product some. I've looked into like the fiberglass
Yep.
Like stuff like A Life Exotic. He's going got that cool greenhouse build on his page now, and he's a really cool guy if you ever get to meet him in Utah. But he kind of walked me through the fiberglass thing and how he would never do fiberglass again.
Oh, really? Okay.
Miserable. But then I started talking to like koi companies.
Yeah.
You know, because when you look at like what like a lot of these people, like they have their giant breeder koi fish and it's just these massive water holding troughs, like huge.
Yeah.
And not what you're going to find at Tractor Supply or anything like that. And so that's when I kind of started looking into stuff like that. And then I came across Rusty Reed Turtle Man and all that stuff and his massive stock tanks that he provides. And then it's like, well, I wish I would have known about these because I wouldn't have used the pond liner to begin with because I already knew this was a risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to go stock tank for the next one. I think is going to be the goal. I just need to find one big enough locally or somewhat locally that I can go drive and pick up. Yeah, because those are good. What kind of, I guess, like for your everyday, you know, you're from what I see on your Instagram, you're building something all the time, I guess, especially in the summer. But, you know, like for the more or less crocodile or the otters or whatever, like what kind of tools do you like kind of keep around to help you build those?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's. I guess I would say it's common if you build things, you know, like impact driver, drill. I mean, like screws, you know, caulking gun, you know, sawzall, circular saw, miter saw, table saw. I mean, so I guess it sounds like a lot, but you know, like just I don't know, like I saved up to get those things. Like the first time I ever built a deck,
Yeah.
I had like a handsaw, a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Which sucked. But I mean, again, I was 19 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to follow a YouTube, and they're pulling all the fancy equipment. I'm like, well, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are all things I commonly use. And granted, you don't need a table saw.
Yeah.
For me, that just makes it easier to cut big sheets of plywood than sitting there setting up the saw horses, positioning the plywood, getting out the square and marking everything, and hoping my circular saw stays on track.
Yeah.
Get through a guide and just be like, bam, done.
Yeah.
So I mean, it can get manageable, but you know, when you're starting, you know, projects, you know, a lot of people don't even know if they're going to like building it. The idea of building something so appealing, it's so rewarding sounding, and some people are like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay else to it. Like next time I do a concrete, that sucked. I'm gonna pay a concrete company to come and spray concrete. Like
Yeah.
I'm not doing that again. But yeah.
Yeah, but you got to try it in order to know. That's what we have had this on a couple episodes where we just talked about the concept of trying shit, for lack of a better term, because you got to try it to figure it out, and you'll learn from each thing. And
you don't have to go big or go home. You can try on a small project.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people now do like the black foam backgrounds with the silicone and the dirt. You know, just try it on a small small exoteric, just something that isn't large and elaborate. If you like it, if you think the work's worth it, then you can do it on bigger ones. But yeah, some people just it's not as easy as a video always makes it look. Because sometimes videos make it look like anyone can do it, and sometimes you know practice makes perfect. But
yeah,
the more you do it, the better you're gonna get, and then you get to talk to other cool people on podcasts and you know hear about all the cool stuff they do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you feel like building enclosures has gotten easier for you? Like now, do you feel like you can pretty much like plan it out and just go and execute and run into like less issues than you would have when you started?
I would say yes, but that comes from more of a background in what people are expecting to see at a zoo quality place.
Gotcha.
Which adds to the cost, but I know people are expecting to see. So I can already kind of factor that into my overall cost. And you know, once you know how to basically just frame something out, dig posts, how to make sure your posts are level in the ground, you know, like you just know certain things that work well for you, like how to cut sheet metal, all that stuff. It does get easier. But again, sometimes you're going to run across those species that throw you for a loop. You might have thought this will be the easiest thing ever. Like I've done it so many other times, and then that same animal somehow knows how to try to get out, and you're like, why didn't this happen the other 10 times?
Yeah.
And go back to be like, okay, what can I change this time? Or just some things don't always work well. Like for the big retics, I don't always necessarily recommend universal rock, because if you find one moment to get behind that background, their sheer strength separates it straight from the
Oh God, yeah.
So again, and with how messy they are, recommend like the straight black PVC.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to clean. But again, if my retic was on display, I would probably go with either like one of the setups like what Universal Rocks did, where it's like the metal frame where it's all foamed in, so there's no background to get behind.
Yeah.
With like a smooth finished concrete that has a drain that pressure wash it out and then drains out.
Gotcha. For ease.
Yeah. So much easier.
Yeah.
Going through all the paper towels and just destroy its enclosure in about 12 years when it has the second.
Oh God. Yeah. I can't imagine. I've got a naturalistic setup for one of my carpet pythons, and I can't imagine it being, 6 times as large and maybe more than that in the size of the poop coming out of that thing. So
I only keep the 2 retics, and that's more than enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Do you, like, as you're building these things, and like planning them out as far as from a facility and like a business perspective, I'm assuming you guys are like working off a budget and like planning and prepping ahead of the time. Like, what does the planning process go into like for a facility? Because I'm assuming like when you're doing it for your animals specifically, it's a little bit different, however you're planning it, but you can talk through like the thought process behind a facility planning out an enclosure.
So like planning out a facility for another zoo, or
no, like for yourselves, for you guys, like, like when you're planning and budgeting and everything like that for your facility, not for your personal collection.
Okay, yeah. So like when we do that, obviously, with some things, if I dig a pond a certain size, I have to have the county come out and scan just to make sure that there's no gas, electrical lines in that area. Like regardless if I already know they're not there or not, they still have to do that. So that's like the first step with anything, is making sure I can build it.
Gotcha.
Granted, that really only applies to the ponds for the most part, but again, because I'm not building structures that are insanely tall. After we've assured that we can actually build it there, kind of just looking at the space and thinking, okay, how long can I keep this animal here? Is this an animal that's going to, in the next 5 years, have to move to something else? Can it be living in this spot indefinitely? And that's going to play that kind of next major part on how big that enclosure is going to be. Because if that animal is going to live there indefinitely, or is planned to live there indefinitely, I'm going to give it as much space as I possibly can. If it's a grow out type of area, I have way more wiggle room.
Yeah.
I can put a 4-foot alligator. I'm like, okay, you can live in a 6x20, for like the next year and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But, and then once you kind of start looking into that, I start looking into materials now, and that's the hard part between building for reptiles and mammals. Mammals treat their materials completely different. I don't really see a lot of reptiles chewing and gnawing on wood.
Yeah. Okay.
I look at porcupines and capybaras, and they're just chewing on things. You have to make sure none of your wood is toxic or anything like that. You have to make sure, like primates, they're little grubby little fingers. If I'm using like sheet metal, I have to make sure they can't get their fingers in between that sheet metal and slice their fingers open.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of things like that, like zip ties. Reptiles are not going to chew on a zip tie and ingest it. Like mammals can do that in a heartbeat. So there's a lot, like even like the vinyl coated fencing. Reptiles aren't going to chew it off. Like so, it really comes down to chewing. Mammals explore the a lot with their mouths and their hands.
Yeah.
Kind of explore with their sense of sight, touch, like smell. Like what am I seeing? Mammals explore things a little bit more like a toddler. Toddler proof it.
Gotcha.
That's kind of a big challenge, but once we start looking at that, what materials we can use, we typically design, okay, the animal need, what do we want the animal to have, what does the public expect to see? So animal need comes first, then what we want that animal to have, whether it's additional perches, like, more areas to get away, enrichment opportunities, and then what the public's going to expect. Do I need to make the front of this enclosure look like it's all the round logs that are staggered to give it that third world country fence appearance, or, we call it zoofying it at the cost, but that's kind of like what goes into it at that point. And then after that point, and sometimes we have changed up design structure as we've gone through, we've started building. We're like, this did not go necessarily how we thought it would in our head. And we just kind of backtrack a little and work around it.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you guys like put together all of this like plan and everything ahead of time, or like for me, it's a lot of times I'm just winging it, and I'm just, I have an idea in my head and I start working, but
we'll come up with a concept, like we'll draw it out on graph paper and everything and try to put it to like a smaller scale. Like, okay, like each square on the graph represents like a foot, and we'll kind of like draw it out like that, kind of see how it works out for us. And then like the initial design, we'll kind of sketch out and everything, and then I'll send that to Stuart if I ask him to make anything like trees or whatnot for me. And then after that, the winging it, that comes down to me. My wife's a wonderful supervisor, and she'll come out and be like, change that, put that there. I like this branch here. That's gonna be better. Which, she's doing it for like what the animals, and she has a great perspective on like what mammals will do too. So it's really, really helpful to like hear that perspective as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's awesome, man. I feel like I was saying, where for me, and I'm sure Brenden too, when we start to do something, we just start doing it. And I think having that, like doing a graph paper and setting up, size wise, especially on a smaller scale where you're doing it like this square's an inch, is a lot easier probably.
Yeah.
But, I think that's a awesome thing for people to implement in their planning stages, and can probably help, the final product be a lot closer to what you think it should be.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have to do that with like smaller enclosures. If I'm looking at like a 24 by 24 by 24 thing, I'm not really, I guess, sketching that out by any means. I mean, I might kind of come up with some concepts. I might lay it on the back and position some pieces of wood and stuff how I like them and that. But again, I guess you could sketch it out, but yeah. But often you have to sit there and try to put the piece of wood in there and end up having to make cuts, or if it doesn't work, then But it seems tedious, but in reality, it's really not tedious. I mean, that's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
Unfun part about it is once you realize how expensive things cost.
Yeah.
You go to a home improvement store and you're like, wow, like, okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does push like delays on projects, because you were like, okay, well, this should $250, and when you get a $400 like receipt, you're like, okay, like,
this is happening.
We'll give up for a little bit, because you always have to build what's priority.
Yeah.
As much as I love the aquariums, aquarium keeping is not a priority that keeps this business up and going.
Yeah.
So that's why I save up to the side and for those things, and
Yeah. I didn't think about this till now, but you were saying that you built, a lot of this during COVID, like especially the Sloth House piece of it. And I know during COVID, the lumber prices were insane. So I can't imagine that was great timing for that.
No, it was, it was miserable. I mean, just to kind of put it like, in perspective, like our otter enclosure, that cost probably about $15,000 worth of wood.
Wow.
Because, one, it's built outside, so I can't just use a regular 2x4. Because again, even if you seal a 2x4 that's been like stained, the moment they break through that stain, I've exposed that wood, and it's useless at that point. So that was a pretty tedious build. The Sloth House, thankfully, that was the sunroom that was already on the house. So structurally, I really had to do nothing to it.
Okay, nice.
It only had the natural light. We put up the universal rock wall. We designed the grid system on top. We put in the trees. We placed the vines. And it's also changed since we first built it. When we first built it, I didn't have my Cayman lizard on exhibit. We had a baby, more or less, crocodile there. We had our mata turtle and the 3 sloths and the armadillo, and that was it.
Yeah.
So now we just kind of added to it over time's gone, and we changed things around. We gave the Mata. He went from like a 200-gallon swimming area. Now he has about 480.
Oh, wow.
But he just sits in one corner. So at least he has the option to drag himself to the other side if he wins.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of that was also adding to the aesthetic of it. To really create that immersive interaction experience for people.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for people who don't realize, this is your house also, correct?
Yeah, I do live on site.
Okay.
So that's why we only do private tours. Especially once people hear we're a rescue, people just drop off animals.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
It's not just the sulcatas. We had somebody drive by in their truck, dump a 5-foot alligator in the ditch and drive away.
Oh, my God.
They covered their license plates with cardboard, so they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
We've had people slide turtles through like over the fence, cats, dogs. I've had people throw roosters over the fence, and it's
what the hell, man?
It's a simple email solves all kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But people are afraid of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that's also another big thing that I wish would just be like places like Fish and Wildlife would have that, like, just drop it off.
Yeah.
Of course, just drop it off, go on your way. Like, it's better than putting it in the wild. It's better than trying to sell it. To drop it off.
Yeah.
That way, people that may have thought I can do this, a lot of people just don't want to get in trouble. There's no bad intention. They don't want to get in trouble, and they're afraid of, because when you hear the whole, like, for us, it's possession of a restricted species is potentially a $10,000 fine.
Oh, my God.
Do they do that? Most of the time, no.
Yeah.
If it's a hedgehog, ferret, they're like, hey, don't do it again. And then that's it.
Yeah.
But if they caught you took something out of the wild or you brought something across the country, now it turns into a federal type thing. And that's when it starts to get tricky.
Yeah.
Or if you fight them on it, then sorry, that causes issues too. But so yeah, I mean, it's great being able to live on site just because, when there's bad weather, I can be around. We can be here checking on the perimeter fence, like just making sure every animal's okay. It's warm during the winter, that heating elements haven't gone out. Just everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize you lived on site. And then you were talking about the otters. You said you heard the pump at like 3 a.m, and I was like, oh, he lives on site. That's insane.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's good thing you do, right? Because if not,
Yeah, I mean, it does, help a lot with stuff like that, especially whenever sometimes we get like bottle babies brought in, and it's nice to be able to just go downstairs and be able to heat up the bottle for it and feed it.
Yeah.
Call it that. But it does also run the risk because then everyone like our address isn't public.
Yeah.
We don't let it be public. And when people do tours with us, they sign waivers saying they will not give out our address because we don't need random people just showing up here saying, hey, I want to see the animals.
Right.
We also do work with Fish and Wildlife. We hold evidence animals.
Yeah.
And if they're part of a case, some people go through drastic steps to get their illegal animals back. And
oh, jeez.
We've all heard about like psychotic animal rights activists just doing anything they can to, even if it's to kill the animal. Like, it's a sad world out there.
Yeah. Goes back to this is just something we love, and there's so much like darkness around it.
It is. You would think it'd be I don't know, like not as much drama and stress, but there's a lot of drama in the animal industry.
Yeah, there is way too much.
It should make a really successful show out of it. I mean, they did with Tiger King.
Yeah,
all the drama that went into that, and it's like they haven't even tapped on the reptile industry.
Yeah. Luckily, and people always ask me this. They're like, "Why hasn't there been something like that in the reptile world?" And I was like, I don't know of anyone off the top of my head who's as psychotic as Joe Exotic. Like, we don't have anyone on that level, Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, I know there's. I thought they were coming out with something called the Venom King or what, or like I thought. I mean, maybe that was just some random thing I saw on Facebook that meant absolutely nothing.
No, I think they are. I think they are.
They?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they pulled up some pretty big names that they've talked about, but again, all these big names, I'm sure once they saw Tiger King, they completely said, "No, I'm not doing any kind of show with you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Joe Exotic thought it was going to be a great Like, Joe. It didn't work out for him that way. So I mean, I can't really imagine a lot of people being very much on board. That's why a lot of zoos don't have their own reality shows, because that's not the kind of attention they draw. Because all you have to do is take a photo of an animal inside of an enclosure, turn it black and white, and put on in the arms of an angel. And you have a sad animal abuse commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy for things to look worse than they actually are too, you know.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Like I'm not a huge fan of rat keeping at all, but you know, the vast majority of people who are keeping in racks, I won't speak for all of them because I would assume that there's definitely some that are not great, but you know, the animal is perfectly healthy. It's not like it's living in feces, and you know, like these people keep them in racks because it's easy to keep them clean. That's why they do it, you know. So
I mean, it is a great way to keep track of something, keep something clean, like swap it in and out really quickly, especially if you keep big numbers. But I mean, the enrichment aspect isn't really necessarily there as much. So the rack system's always kind of a big. There's always lots of debates about racks and everything like that, but that's most things in the reptile industry. Is this is good? This is like reptile, like bearded dragons on sand. Like, you know, all the carpet and granted, if you want to keep it on newspaper, it's gonna be a clean enclosure if you keep it clean, but you're not gonna allow it to burrow or do anything.
The other thing people aren't ready for on bearded dragons is that they're actually pretty arboreal and they need a lot of height, you know, and no one's ready for that conversation.
They sell them in just like the low boy, like not the low boys, like the exoterior, the low one, like the wide low or whatever, and that's like supposed to be like, this is great for the bearded dragon. But I mean, I've kept one in a 6x6x4, and it was almost at the top of that branch.
Oh, I'm sure.
Up there, I'm like, you okay? Like, you're inches away from that light, and he's just mouth open sunbathing.
That's how they should be, man. That's how they are in the wild. And from what I've heard, you know, they're up in trees and top of fence posts and all over the place.
They're up in trees, and I mean, they look like crap in the wild. They're surviving. So, you see like all these bearded dragons, you know, they're just kind of chunky on the heavier side. You see these just wild Mad Max lizards that are chasing them. Oh, man, they're cool, but no, their setups. With as popular as they are, I'm surprised there's not more. You would think someone would just have this killer crazy naturalistic setup for a beardy and just be like, that's my setup, and that would be the thing people were aspiring to do. I mean, it's readily available animal. Its materials are insanely readily available. You don't have to worry about dense humidity and misters and everything like that. So I mean, that would be cool to see. You know, I've always wondered why when you go to zoos, like sometimes zoos don't just show like how some of the most basic reptiles should naturally be kept and live.
Our my local zoo just did a renovation on the reptile house, and they've got a huge like desert area, and they've got a beardy and a walk-in full enclosure, and it's really cool to see that. Neat. What's that?
I said that's neat. Ours has a black-headed python exhibit like that. You can rarely see it, but it's such a cool big exhibit. That just makes you think like, oh, this would be a cool like beardy exhibit, or you know, like a Woma python, just anything that lives like in the outback in Australia. This would be amazing for.
Yeah, absolutely. The way they've got it, they've got the beardies. They've got a blue tongue skink in with it too, which is interesting, especially because I'm pretty sure it's either a northern or an Indonesian, so it's definitely not from the desert. But they've got the Ackies, and then they've got Uromastics too, just like the general like the Saharan Uromastics or whatever the common ones. But same kind of setup, and it's just really cool to see these common lizards, you know, being cared for properly. And
it's neat to see like mixed species exhibits when things can get together and be completely fine and do really well. You know, like sometimes people take that to way different lengths and don't always do the best mixed species exhibits, and that normally it's biting them biting them pretty bad, or the animals suffer from it. But
it's got to be right for sure. That's definitely a topic we're going to cover in the future. It's just a whole podcast on mixed species exhibits and what you got to think about and plan for and everything like that. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really cool ones out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Roy Arthur Blodgett on a couple weeks ago, and he's got Amazon puffing snakes in with some lizards from the guy on a shield as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just really cool the way he's got it. And he said, the snakes don't even care about the lizards. Like, if anything, it's the lizards caring about the snakes more. So, which is really interesting. But
I'd worried initially because my Cayman lizard free roams the sloth house. He's always lived with the Matamata turtle. They've always cohabitated, no issues. But it's actually the sloths that are more interested in him than the other way around.
Really?
Like, I've had one of the sloths come just crawl above him, like look at him, reach down, pick him up, smell him, and put him right back down, walk away, and he did absolutely nothing.
Wow.
It's like, oh, okay. And I mean, I've caught them sleeping together in like the papasan chairs, and people like they love each other. I'm like, no, they're tolerating, like they don't care that the other one's there.
Yeah.
And the sloths move slow enough that's not like they're making it panic or anything like that. And so I mean
the sloths have pretty big teeth, don't they? Like
so the two-toed sloths have pretty large incisors that they use to rip fibrous leaves, but they also deliver a nasty bite.
Yeah.
That's one of those things a lot of people think about when it comes to sloths is that they can be a very aggressive species if they need to be.
That's crazy. And they've got big claws too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So sloths I've only seen from like 4 to 5 feet away in a zoo enclosure, so I have like real no concept of them.
Yeah, I mean, sloths, they make great exhibit animals because they don't do anything.
Yeah.
But people's expectations of the sloth are so high for the world's slowest moving mammal.
Yeah.
And you'll sit there and I mean it's hard going to zoos and hearing people talk like, oh my gosh, like why is it not moving? Or like when you see like that alligator doesn't look happy, and you're like, what is an unhappy alligator?
Yeah.
Gosh, like Harambe all over again. Everyone became gorillas. But I mean, the sloths, they definitely, there's a lot more to them than what a lot of people think. And, I've worked with them, for probably about the last 5 years pretty closely daily. And so even myself, I've learned a lot, and I'm, still learning. And there's so much, as popular as animals they are, there's not a lot of research on them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the tricky thing about them. But, it is nice being able to teach people about those animals and really kind of bust some myths out of them, just because, everyone's conception about them is it's an animal that wants to hug you, and that's like the last thing it wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason they get like roped in there with the koalas and stuff with the way that they are, the hugging and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yes. I worked with one, and I have no desire to ever work with one again.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that bad?
No, I like the kangaroos and stuff, but no, wallaby. Koalas are nasty.
Did the sloth thing, like, I feel like sloths have blown up as far as like pop culture, like they're on like cards and everything. They're just everywhere all of a sudden. Did that kind of happen like at the same time you guys were building the facility, or has that been going on longer?
So it's been going on a little bit longer than that. I want to say it was some kind of documentary that Kristen Bell had a sloth on there, and obviously very famous actress, really kind of brought these animals to light. And, for the three-toed sloth, there's 4 species of three-toed sloth. They look like they're permanently smiling.
Gotcha.
They exhibit facial expressions and everything. So when they're stressed, their eyes get huge. That's the only sign that, hey, I'm stressed out. What follows after that is the attempt to get away or to bite.
Gotcha.
It's not like it's going to give you warnings to be like, hey, stay away from me. Like, so unfortunately, and their first defense against predators is to sit there and do absolutely nothing. So when you see all these people like holding them in Costa Rica and it's not moving, that's a terrified animal.
Yeah.
As far as it knows, you are a big predator, just pulled it right off a tree and you're about to kill it. So it's sitting there just like, if I don't move, it can't see me. If I don't move, it can't see me. And then it's passed on and passed on and passed on. And so they go through hundreds of sloths a week that die from stress.
Man.
Wow.
Which is a really big and sad thing. But unfortunately, when you see the photo, it looks like this thing is smiling. because it always looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you go to zoos, there's a reason you don't really see that species in zoos. It's because they only really eat a leaf off the cecropia tree. So they have a specialized bacteria in their stomach that helps them digest and break that down. And so places like the Dallas World Aquarium, San Diego Zoo, they actually have to import fresh leaves multiple times a week to feed those three-toed sloths.
Wow.
That's why you see the Linnaeus two-toed sloth. That's the most common species of sloth at zoo. They've adapted to the diets we can provide them a lot better, but they also have those massive incisors, so they're very prone to biting. And it doesn't even have to be aggressive. They're curious spiders. I mean, they navigate the world through a sense of smell, and when they smell something of interest, they're going to start chewing on it to see if they like it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most people are holding their head right by their neck. And so they have such a disgusting bacteria in their saliva. And their teeth are shaped like pyramids. It is a horrific bite. And it's not fast, it's just chewing.
Oh man.
Have you ever had that happen, or you've been?
Yeah, I've been bitten by a sloth, and the bite lasts about 3 minutes.
Oh my God!
Just sitting there and gnawing into me. I couldn't pull away or anything like that, and it just kind of let go, and it wasn't even stressed or anything. It was just I had like lotion on one of my arms because it was dry, and it just decided to taste how that tasted.
Oh man.
Oh man.
The way the teeth were formed, it actually pulled the interior flesh out, and like you would think like a bullet when it came out that side of my arm.
Oh my God.
Packed in, sutured, and everything, and I was on antibiotics because probably within a few hours there was starting to be signs of green and yellow from the infection.
Wow.
It was a brutal bite, and again, so like anytime I have to hold a work with the sloth, I'm constantly watching what this thing is doing.
Yeah.
But often, especially if we all have facial hair and beards, sloths love to rub their nose across it.
Okay.
Typically, our beards might smell like something we ate.
Yeah.
And that's when a bite starts to try to happen. So I'm constantly, people are like, oh, he's nuzzling you. I'm like, that's not what he's doing. It's checking to see if I have anything to snack on.
Yeah.
He's going for the jugular.
I mean, I've had people that come from tours and they're like, oh, you don't have to tell me. And like, they'll show me massive scars. They're like, yeah, I tried to pick one up crossing the road in like South America and it ripped me open.
Oh God!
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's not what they show you on the cute videos.
Yeah,
but
that's so funny. It's funny. My sister is terrified of sloths. Like of all the animals in the world, that's like her biggest fear, and so she's going to get some level of validation from this.
I mean, they are a creepy animal. I mean, if you've ever seen like a CAT scan of one, they look like a Thanksgiving turkey with large claws.
God.
The three-toed sloths have extra vertebrae in their neck that allow them to turn their heads 270 degrees around. They're creepy sometimes. I mean, they're cool animals from a survival standpoint, but they're kind of creepy in some ways.
Yeah. It's just so funny how it's like pop culture, like sloths are the thing right now, and it's just funny. But they sound super cool and creepy, but cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have an appreciation for what they are as a wild animal. For whatever reason, why somebody would want an animal that lays in its own waste naturally, and has to be its care is like a reptile.
Yeah,
has to be kept around 83 to 84 degrees optimally with 90% humidity. They can't regulate their own body temperature. If it gets below 74 degrees for too long, the bacteria in their stomach dies and they pass away.
Wow.
Yeah, but
that's crazy.
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of the ones that get imported fresh from the jungle, they typically don't last more than a couple of days in captivity, in the pet trade at least.
Damn, man. Yeah, that's definitely not a pet you would want.
No.
It's so funny though how like the public perception of something like a sloth, where there is all these things, like they have the nasty bite and they're a little creepy and whatever, but the public perception is like great. And then you have reptiles that like, you've got a garter snake that could never do anything to you, like there's very little recourse from a garter snake and people are terrified of it because it's a snake,
Oh yeah. It's like, fur just makes people drop their guard.
Yeah.
You could see like an anaconda and you could see a jaguar and people are getting more afraid of that anaconda.
Yeah.
When that anaconda is 99.99% of the time, you have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
A jaguar, on the other hand, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
So yeah. Fur makes people nice and relaxed and like, oh, it's okay. It's cute. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah. That's funny. Does your education differ for something like that? Like for a sloth, are you trying to educate people about like, hey, here's why you shouldn't hold them and do all this versus a reptile where you're like, hey, this is why it's not bad,
So it definitely can. With sloths, a lot of it, like I said, it's a lot of myth busting. You're really trying to educate people on, one, why they don't make good pets, and you're trying to educate them just on the species in general. Where they're from, what they do, their normal daily habits, because a lot of social media doesn't cover that, or they'll be like, this is an animal that only moves a foot a year, which is not true.
Yeah.
Males travel miles every night looking for females. So really, you're just trying to provide some kind of general concept of just the animal and try to kind of shatter what social media has made them into be. And I mean, same with reptiles. Yeah, you are trying to get more people to not necessarily love them or want them, but just to garner a respect for them.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate what they are, what nature intended them to be in their respective environment, or kind of just trying to show that reality. Like, hey, if you are trying to get one as a pet, here's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I respect like Wildfire Retics. Some of the shows he talks at, he brings out the baby retic, a 6-foot retic, and then he brings out one of his like 22-foot ones to be like, this is reality.
Yeah.
And for people to see that in person, I think is great, because not only do they get that exposure, but then it's like, oh, that's a lot bigger than what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the best pet for my kid.
Yeah. Having an idea of like 20 foot in your head is very different from 20 foot in reality, especially when it's a snake and you have girth and everything like that. Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much the big difference between mammals and reptiles for us is you don't have to pull teeth to get people to like and appreciate mammals, but it gets pretty hard with reptiles.
Yeah.
Even at the expos, I mean, you get a lot of people that, granted, if they go to expos to learn and get that exposure, that's wonderful. But you can bring out these animals, and some people are just like, oh no, like we'll bring out alligators, and like that thing needs to be killed. You need to eat it.
What?
But this depends on what state you go to. You go to some of those southeastern states, and alligator's an alligator. Like why are you trying to tell people to protect them? And so it definitely, it depends on the state you go to. But here in California, alligators aren't a permitted species to keep as pets, so it's a little bit different. Granted, if I go to Florida, it's like, well, alligator. Like,
Seen about 20 on my commute in this morning.
So the message does change a little bit, but we still like Brenden. She goes to West Palm Beach and she speaks at that expo, and she gets to talk about alligators, the critically endangered Chinese alligator, stuff like that, and just kind of talks about their role in the environment, just because there may be people that just don't know. We talk in Texas and people don't realize alligators are found in Texas. And they're like, no way. I'm like, yeah. It's a Texas native species. So, I mean, at least if you can educate, at least a couple people to kind of bring some light to something, then it's good. It's worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And huge props for you for doing that too. So
yeah, man.
We appreciate it. If it's not shown more broadly in the reptile community, we definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate hearing that. It's good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Brenden, we're getting up on 2.5 hours here. Do you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
I'm trying to think. Actually, yeah, I do have one.
Sure.
I have one I'd like to ask, only because I'm an expecting father next month, right? I'm having my first kid.
Okay.
So how does especially having a baby, how does that play into like your daily chores with all the animals and everything? How do you navigate that?
Honestly, I'm over 30 when I had my first kid. Mm-hmm. So, when we found out we were expecting, everyone's like, oh, your life is over. But my lifestyle is already caring for other animals outside of myself. Mm-hmm. I don't have the luxury of going on vacations all the time or just going out and doing all these, things because my life is dedicated to these animals. So, the mentality was that like, okay, I'm about to have a very sensitive animal that requires constant care.
Yeah.
So, and there's definitely alterations to my life, my schedule, like things were different. But between my wife and I, we balanced it out really, really well. She's more of a night owl. I'm more of a morning person. So she would stay up later with the baby, and then I would be up earlier in the morning. And granted, there was times where I would literally be holding my baby while spraying out like a lemur enclosure.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely some challenges and some hurdles to get over, but as long as it wasn't as hard as to me as everyone made it out to be. Everyone made it out like, oh, your life is over. You can't have fun anymore. You can't do anything anymore. And that just wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But, there are some nights where we're up later trying to catch up on things throughout the day because she had a rough day, or maybe she didn't want to take her nap. So we didn't have that nap time to get ahead on things. And sometimes there's early mornings where she wakes up stupid early, and, that's when the day starts. So it's, but she just turned a year last Wednesday, and when I think about it, that went by in the blink of an eye. I can't fathom how fast that went. So, and again, everyone told me it's long nights but short years, and that it's not going to feel like that in the first weeks by any means because your entire life is about to change. But it couldn't be more truer, especially when they start hitting those milestones, like when they start walking, and you're like, oh, huh. When did that happen?
Yeah.
For a little sack of potatoes that couldn't do anything, it seemed like yesterday. Now you're walking and smacking me. But yeah, so for me, it wasn't a massive. It was a change, but wasn't a massive change because we already care for so many things, and it's just another awesome thing to get to work with and care for. And hopefully she grows up around these animals and loves them. And I have animals that are going to outlive me, so hopefully she'll want those animals because
yeah, man, absolutely.
I'm kind of out of luck.
Nice, man. Yeah, I was just curious, like, especially with people, because I don't, in comparison to you and like guys like you, I keep very little, like for me it's a lot. I have 2 rooms that I built dedicated to all these animals, but like when I see people like you able to navigate that, it puts me at ease a little bit.
Yeah. Just from your stuff, it seems like you have a system for it.
Yeah.
You might have to tweak that system a little bit, like do it at a different time. But as long as you kind of keep up that system and that routine, everything just becomes a routine.
Right.
And once you've established a routine, and it does get easier, but the routine changes a little bit as they are able to do more.
Yeah.
Our routine changed when she started eating solid food. Because now you're having to sit there and make sure she doesn't choke and everything like that. It wasn't just, okay, she took a bottle, she nursed, and now she's going to sleep. It's like, okay, now we're doing this and we're watching Miss Rachel. So that might become a very big part of your life. So you're probably going to know a ton of nursery rhymes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, so honestly, it's great. It's wonderful. I love being a father. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And to me, it was not as bad as everyone made it out to be. But again,
that's what I figured.
I'm not a party animal that's going to sit there and be mad that I can't go out and get wasted every night and like go live it up anymore. That's not a lifestyle I lived anyway. So maybe that did make it easier. But if you already have animals and stuff and priorities you have to take care of, then it's not too bad of a transition.
Yeah, just treat it like a very fragile reptile, I guess, right?
Very fragile reptile. The otters helped me. I was already used to something screaming at 5
a.m. Yeah, true.
Bed. So it wasn't too big of a difference.
Nice.
Yeah, you were saying you were hand raising stuff or bottle feeding stuff, and I was like, this man was ready for it beforehand.
Yeah, but that's also like the system we worked. I don't like staying late. But my wife does. That's how she catches up on emails, and she'd stay up and do like the midnight and the 2 a.m. bottle feedings, and then we just trade off the 4 a.m. feeding, and then I'd do the 6 a.m., the 8 a.m. feedings, and just, it was just about finding a balance.
Yeah.
And versus just both of you trying to power through it and be zombies, Just, we took turns like, hey, I'm going to take a nap now. You're going to take it. We just, we found a way to make it work with all the animals. And, I like to think, we care for over 200 animals. So I have faith in other animal people. If we can do it, we're first-time parents. We had no idea what to do. We don't have any family out here in California with us. So then, you're probably in super good hands.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Makes you feel better.
Your baby's in good hands.
Yeah.
You're going to be great, Brenden. It's going to be good.
Oh, I'm excited, man. I'm stoked. We're just at 4 weeks out, so it's getting real.
Yeah.
Could technically be at any time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Jack. I was like, I'd like to, kind of do some of these episodes and get some booked up because I don't know what my schedule is going to look like at any moment from now going forward.
It does get hard to trick and plan. I mean, we were lucky. We had our baby the day before she was expected.
Nice.
Wow.
That was pretty spot on from their point. And so it was, and thankfully, healthy baby, all that good stuff. Mom did well; she did great. But yeah, it was an adjustment, but it did make trying to schedule and we schedule tours, and but telling everyone like, hey, sorry, I'm like 8.5 months pregnant, so I do apologize if I have to refund your tour or book it to a different day. We appreciate your understanding. And thankfully, people are very understanding when it comes to like, hey, we just had a baby, because odds are a lot of those people are parents, and they also understand that stress or just not knowing, or sometimes your baby can be like a little colicky, or like there's days where I look like I'm just dead when I go to school, and I'm like, sorry, my baby's teething, and everyone's like, oh and so thankfully we found that so many people are just so understanding when it comes to a baby, because it's just you can't do a single thing about it.
Yep.
A baby's a baby.
Except for me, Brenden. If you're not showing up to podcasts, we're gonna have to have a conversation. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna get replaced.
I'm just kidding. Oh man,
that's funny.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Daniel, we really appreciate you giving us your time. You are a very busy man, so we appreciate you jumping in here.
Stoked to be on. It's an awesome podcast, and you guys are doing cool things, and you're talking about awesome things too. So I wish more of this stuff was just discussed, versus argued about over a Facebook post. It's nice to just, talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate that, man. It's been good so far. So,
well, you guys are doing good. So,
granted,
you might have a little stall here in about a month on episodes, but and you may not want to release any more after that, but it'll be cool to see what else you guys bring out. And if for some reason you guys are ever out in my area, please let me know. And
man, absolutely,
see it all and see the painstaking otters and all that stuff.
Yes, you best believe if I'm out there, I'm hitting you up for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Right on, yeah. So we're in the North Bay area, so we're just north of San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So on that note, do you want to let the people know where they can find you guys to book tours and everything like that?
So you're able to go to safariencounters.org. If you click on the Visit Us tab, that'll be the Sonoma Sloth House. We offer a variety of different experiences, because sloths aren't everyone's jam. So some people just come to see the otters, some come just to see the capybaras, some come to see all three. Once you just follow those booking instructions and you've booked your date and time, then you sign your liability waiver and you get to come hang out with us. And typically you get to listen to me spiel about all these different animals, and you're probably going to learn more about crocodilians than you ever wanted to know. But no, it's always a good time. We've always really prided ourselves on providing people just an awesome but also safe, hands-on, and ethical experience that it's great for people, but it's also great for the animals. We really do pride ourselves on. We're also the only zoological facility in our area that has a completely clean inspection record for no animal health and welfare infractions.
Oh wow!
So we pride ourselves very, very highly and well on how well we do care for our animals every single day, and so it's a good time though. So we've never had a bad tour. Someone says I was disappointed, but yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I definitely highly recommend everyone go out and book a tour if you're in the area. And you guys are in Sonoma Valley, right? Or in that area? Or
Sonoma County area, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're doing a wine tour or anything out there, go hit Daniel up and go see some sloths. So, and then you're
big alligator.
Yeah, there you go. And then your Instagram is Thorzan with a 0, correct?
Yes.
I
swear I'm not that vain. My wife didn't let me put Daniel_more because that was too basic. So, she came up with Thorzan for me.
Awesome. I love it.
It definitely fits though, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And
yeah.
It's great with the primates, but
That's awesome. Awesome, everybody. So go check out Daniel and all his stuff. And then for me, it's just Jack Oliver _reptiles on Instagram if you want to find me. And then Brenden.
Yep, mine's just BM Exotics on Instagram, man.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Later, guys.
Thanks, Daniel. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you, Jack. See you, Brenden.